pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So again, thanks very much. We always appreciate the Board of Finance's time. The Board of Education is almost entirely here, which is great. And the superintendent will take the lead for us in terms of representing the district, and certainly Julie will have a hand in. I believe you would like to start with a brief presentation to give some overview of where we are right now in the budget process, and then we're open for any questions or that you would like. Should we turn off lights so that the PowerPoint's a little bit easier to see?
Thank you, Matt.
Sure. Thank you, Matt.
For the Board of Finance, because the Board of Education already received it, there's a copy of my cover letter that went to the board. So what we're presenting tonight is the superintendent's budget overview. The Board of Ed has only seen it once before, and so they have not obviously taken a vote on it. There's still some discussion, but that letter is the letter that the board received that accompanied this budget. I don't have lots of slides, and I'm prepared to give a presentation overview using these slides, and then Julie and I can answer questions and any questions that you have. And I know you have another meeting, so we're going to be really mindful of your time. I'm going to try to use this.
Probably have to point at the projector.
Where's the
Hit it, Heston.
It's the computer. It's the box.
Thank you. Okay. The budget is developed each year with the following items in mind. We have to support our district strategic plan. We have to continue to support programmatic curricular and enrollment needs. And enrollment, of course, is tricky, and I know that it's something that we focus on every year. It's gotten even trickier since the economic crisis that we faced recently. It used to be that you'd be able to do projections 5 or 10 years out, and they'd be pretty on the money. But what I'm hearing, not only in Old Saybrook, but across the state, superintendents saying is that it's harder and harder to predict enrollments because we can't use all of the same standards as we used to. I think that people are running into that in a number of areas of life. So this year, when we projected out enrollments, we used the projection that we had hired someone to create for us. But we also looked at our last 3 to 5 years and looked how enrollment fluctuated so we could make sure we were double checking that number. Obviously, fiscal responsibility is important to us. We want to make sure that every decision we make, we've checked and double checked, and we've looked for every opportunity to make sure that we have used our resources or asking for resources wisely, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. We want to be mindful of the pressures on the local economy. Supporting professional development has never been more important. Not only do we have our own initiatives to support, and those are pretty significant, and we want to move the district forward, and we want to honor the strategic plan, we have also in the past 5 years seen more legislated and mandated professional development than ever in the history of education in my 27 years in the business. I did an activity for a superintendent's meeting last week, and I presented this actually to some of our legislators. It's 4 pages. When I got done, I collected all of the mandated and legislative professional development. It turns out to be 4 pages, front and back, of mandated training for certified and non-certified staff. Much of that is annual, and that didn't even include coaching training. That was just for teachers, para-educators, administrators. A lot of that doesn't come with funding, and a lot of that is implies that there shouldn't be any funding needed, but the truth is there is. If you run out of professional development time, and we have a good chunk of professional development time in our calendar year, but when you run out of time, you're paying substitutes in order to train people, and there's no way out of those. Those are mandated. Thoughtful resource allocation. When we are putting our budget together, we're always looking at where can we combine requests, where can we put things together and be able to work together and share. And that means sharing staff, professional development. We always look at our contracts. We're always mindful of those as we go into negotiation. We look at insurance. We try to lock in on oil and diesel at a good time. Julie and I are watching the per barrel price of oil every day. It's sort of our end-of-day activity. And obviously, we want to support a multi-year maintenance plan. I have to say, when I came to this district, I was impressed with the condition of these buildings. I know we have some work to do. I don't know of a district that doesn't, but these buildings are in great shape, and that's because they've been taken care of. We have to keep planning 5 years out. We know that we're going to be running into problems. We know that a surprise can happen at any time, and that can have a significant impact on our budget. But we really need to. We've started to focus even more clearly on what we need to be investing in as far as our facilities go in the next 5 years. They're some of the biggest buildings in town, and we need to be taking good care of them. And we have to, as I said earlier, support the local and state initiatives. They continue to be underfunded or unfunded, and they're not going away, and they seem to grow exponentially each year, although there's starting to be some pushback. Superintendents are starting to talk about our concerns and how we don't have the financial resources, and we don't have the human resources, and we don't have the time. That's the most important resource we don't have enough of. So when we create our budget, we begin by going through the activity of having a sustained services budget. So we ask the question, what is it going to cost us to open the doors in 2015-16 if we do everything exactly the same as we did in 2014-15? So we roll our staffing numbers forward, we roll our contracts forward, we roll the consumption of oil, our professional development dollars, our substitute dollars. We move it all forward a year, and we create our sustained services budget. That resulted in over $1 million increase, or a 4.17% sustained services budget. At the same time, administrators, and that means principals and others, are out determining what they need for the following year, for 15-16, and we do that on a zero-based budget. So rather than building off the previous budget, which then always implies that you're going to have an increase, we have everyone look at each line item, start from zero, and build back into the line item. When you do it that way, you tend to have more accurate numbers, and you'll see, if you were to break down to the by-object code, that there are line items that go down, as well as some that go up. The increase there moved to a 5.42%, but those are individuals working individually and creating the needs for their building. And that's before we get an opportunity to get together and say, okay, where can we share? What can we put together? So that 5.42%, or $1,313,206 increase, became the superintendent's budget through a team effort. Administrators go in ahead of time and they identify, most important, the ones, the things that they really can't have cut in their buildings, the twos, the things that they could defer a little bit, and the threes, the thing that they could probably put off to the next year or the following year, or could find another way to do it. So they've identified those ahead of time, which makes the process of creating the superintendent's budget a little more easy. You can look for things to put together, you can look at places where you need to make cuts, and we were able to come up with a 2.99% budget, or a $724,265 increase. When you look at the first row and you look at the last row, and even when you look at the second row, you can see how much work goes into getting this down to what we think is fiscally responsible. It still moves our strategic plan forward. We're not abandoning our mission. We're allocating resources in a fiscally responsible way. We're sharing programs. We're reducing overhead wherever we can and where it's appropriate. We also have to be really careful that we're not, borrowing from Peter to pay Paul and shredding programs. We look carefully at all of them as we move forward, and that's how we can get to that number. Thank you. We used this slide last year, and it's just to give you an idea of where the Board of Education budget history has been since 2010-11. I want to point out that 11-12 year, that's an anomaly. That was the year of salary freezes. Everyone agreed to take a salary freeze. That was going on a lot in the state at that time, and that was because of the situation that we were in. You can see in the last 2 years, we have been trying to be responsible about what we do. Not that they weren't before either, but we've been really careful. We know enrollment is decreasing. We know that's a standout, and that's important to us. We also know that these the tax rates continue to be a concern, and we're trying to be careful about that.
Can we copy those slides out, Mrs. Lord?
Sure, we can send them to you.
Please.
Absolutely. This is our budget allocation chart. So I'm going to read numbers to you in case you can't see it. 66.1% is that big green piece. That's salaries, and that's fairly typical for school districts. Most of our dollars are in human resources. Benefits is 15%. Transportation is 5.4. That's that first blue wedge there. The next lighter blue wedge are tuitions. The next one is the lavender that says 0.10 is equipment and maintenance. That's capital maintenance included, and then other is 3.4 is equipment and maintenance, and 0.10 is other. And just to give you a comparison, last year I believe our staffing was 58. Our benefits were 14.4. Our transportation was 4.4. Tuition 3.2, so that's pretty much level funded. Equipment and maintenance was 3.2, and other was 3.0. So we have been, you can see that other, that catch-all, we've been using those dollars to try to catch up on places where we have less flexibility.
So the other is 1%?
The other right now is 0.10.
Where's the?
I'm sorry, 10.0, I'm reading the wrong, I'm reading the one next to it, I'm sorry, which was
So
9.3. Like, Dave, let me do it again, I mixed that up. The other is 10.0, it was 9.3. The equipment last year was 3.0, and it's 0.10 this year. Thanks for catching that. So I want to explain that, because you're going to see in a future slide that it says capital maintenance is a budget driver, yet you see a reduction this year. Capital maintenance is reduced in percentage. If you remember, we had a verbal agreement with the town about reducing that line item. We went out to referendum on our turf track tennis court and windows and roof, Goodwin windows and middle school roof. But it still is driving the budget forward. Again, we still have to continue to address those things that we can't afford to defer for very long. We do have some equipment purchases to make, which Julie can talk about a little bit later. So did I clarify that now? All right.
I was just curious where, like the special education stuff falls in.
Tuition and transportation and salaries.
On the staffing, that's total staffing, right?
Mhm.
Can you break that down by teachers, administrators, and assistants, so we know where that goes and where it's spent from year to year?
Certified, non-certified, and administration.
Yes, please.
Now, or you want to do that?
Well,
I'll finish my presentation.
Sure.
That'd be good.
Mhm.
Should I finish and then she'll answer that?
Sure.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. The budget drivers, and many of them don't change: salaries, medical benefits, special education tuition and transportation, and capital maintenance. One of the things I want to point out in medical benefits, I know you're aware of this, but we're facing it too, is that our 30-hour employees, all of our 30-hour employees will now be eligible for insurance. We're required to make insurance available to them. So we have some folks who will fall into that category. We've done a little bit of a survey. It's mostly in our para-educator group. We've done a little bit of a survey to get a sense of how many of them would jump on our insurance. And, you know, we obviously then we can't ask them to commit to anything, so they can jump on the insurance anyway, even if they indicated they wouldn't. But we have put some dollars aside in the budget, about 25
I'm sorry.
projected benefits on potential
Yeah,
additions.
about 30,000. Yeah.
And that's the end of this presentation. And now we'll take questions.
So you're projecting it if the 30-hour employees accept or take the medical, that will only be $30,000?
We did a brief survey, Dave, which we know which groups don't obviously currently have benefits,
Right.
and we know approximately how many are either already on a plan with a spouse, and how many would opt approximately to take it. So that's how we estimated that.
You had a question about staffing. I do have, the board already has all these documents that I'm handing out. This is the staffing report, so I can hand you a copy of that to look at. While Julie's working on that other number.
What are the two other districts in the area around Old Saybrook that, and what are their numbers in reference to comparison of this district being operated and the numbers compared to the other two districts
Hey, Julie,
where
you've got
they
the
are looking
slides.
for an increase for the 2015, 2016? So we know our competition.
So, your question is, do I know what other school districts, what their increases will be this year?
Yeah.
I only know of one, and I don't think it's official yet. They're all pretty much in the same place we are. They're presenting to their boards. So no, I can't tell you that I do.
Okay.
Those will be coming out soon. The CABE and CAPS every year put out an email to superintendents saying, tell us where you are in your budget and what are you requesting. They're just beginning to come in across the state.
Any other districts having parental input about wanting to start magnetic schools in their areas or anything?
Start magnet schools. Well, I mean, I think if you talk to LEARN, our regional educational servicing center, they're interested in pursuing more magnet schools. Magnet schools, you know, end up being a nice option for people, but they also are very costly to the local Board of Education in the local town.
Right, don't their funding come from the local Board of Education, or the state takes away?
Yeah, I think it's $7,900 right now is the per student tuition, okay? And they're hurting too, because the state isn't raising their enrollment, their allotment, and yet it's costing them more to educate students each year too.
Are you seeing any, or getting a feel for anyone who's retiring?
Nobody's announced yet, but we often get news. You know, we'll have someone will come and say, I'm thinking about it. They'll talk to Julie or me or one of the administrators and say, I'm thinking about it. And they're doing the numbers right now with their own private advisors. So we anticipate, I think we put in for 2. Yes, we put in for 2 retirements this year and made adjustments accordingly.
And then any other reduction in staff?
Yes, we made 1.8 reduction in this budget.
On the unfunded mandates, do you know what the dollar value is?
It's so hard to determine what that dollar value is because every school district does things differently. You have a couple of options. I'll just take, I'll take an example. Emergency planning. We're all supposed to, this is brand new, we're all supposed to, and when I say all, everybody in district is supposed to get incident management trained. It's a multi-day training. It is very comprehensive. So the chief of police trained all of the administrators last summer in it. It was quite a lengthy training. Was it 3 days? Everybody remember? Was it 2 days, 3 days? It's a number of days. I've been through it. This was my second or third time going through it. But that's one thing that has been talked about and heaped on our plates, and the superintendents are pushing back because we don't have 3 days. We have 6 days professional development with our teachers. We have 2 with our paraeducators. We have nothing for some of our groups of people. So the cost to that is hidden in the substitute costs and the time out of class and getting people here after the regular workday. And a lot of the mandates fall into that category. So it's significant dollars, but pretty hard to determine, especially when you have 4 pages double-sided of it. We have teen dating violence training that's mandated, DCF training. Some of these are half an hour, some of these are a couple of hours. They're either annual or every 2 or every 3 years.
Some we can do ourselves, some we
Some
can't.
you have to develop expertise inside, which costs money. Sometimes you have to bring in consultants.
We'd like to see what the number was on that, 'cause that's real.
I can show you the document, the draft of the document that I have, that would give you a sense of how many there are. Some of them require a certain minimum number of hours and some don't spell it out. So it's very fluid. I'm gonna go present again on this at a legislative breakfast. It's very fluid, but it is significant. And as I said, not only with funding, but also with time. We just don't have the time to do it.
Have you locked in on the fuel yet? Or are you still,
We just locked in.
you did?
Yeah.
For next year?
What are the areas of concern? So you present the budget and let's say it gets accepted, but are there still some things that, behind the scenes that concern you, other than, someone breaks unexpectedly?
Are you asking me if I could add something back into the budget,
Yeah.
what would it be? I think I probably would say this evening that I'd be looking to add a position in, that's a teaching position. It's helping to coordinate the math initiatives, K through 12. And also this person would also be responsible for implementing our technology digital tools for learning at the student level, very student and teacher focused. Because that'll push a number of the initiatives that either have been mandated or that we really think we have to do to prepare our students for college and career. I really think would push those initiatives forward.
Are all the safety stuff in school now implemented? Glass, the doors, that stuff, except for the windows already?
We did all of the things that were identified in the walkthroughs. Vito was on that committee. We've made it through almost all the lists. I think there's still a generator that was part of that list that, we've done one, we're trying to sort of space them out. The windows, we put all the fencing up equipment. So yes, most of those have been completed.
Windows are gonna be done when?
This coming summer,
As long as the roof.
yes.
Same time.
Did you just ask what other capital projects besides?
Oh, I didn't ask that.
What other capital projects are there that,
Well, it's an area that I always think we could use more money in, but we try to space things out. We try to work on things over multi-year phases so that it's not such a financial burden. So, we continue with all of the regular things, tile, carpet replacement, we have, exhaust fans, and that's been our biggest expense, quite honestly, is HVAC repairs and upgrades, because our buildings are old, and, that equipment's old, so we see a lot of equipment failures, so it's a big ticket item. We're gonna continue with door, to answer Barry's question as well. The middle school has more doors to be replaced, so we did the front doors, and now we'll go around to all the other main wings and do a wing a year, because they're like $25,000 to do those doors. It's big
And
money.
also safety, security related is a telephone system update at Goodwin.
Goodwin School.
Where are the roof vents? Which school?
The what?
Vents in the roof we're talking about?
You mean the rooftop units? It's just failures that come across, so we expect that Goodwin has a couple of pretty old ones. The middle school, as you know, we replaced all the large ones here.
Right.
So we're in good shape here.
On average, how many a year?
The really big ones are not, they're once every 15 or 20 years. The small ones, which are a couple $1,000s a pop, anywhere from 6 to a dozen can happen easily in a year.
What happens to the heating system with the window change?
That'll all be new unit ventilators. And they'll be, right now, if you remember, we did the big project for controls, energy controls. The wiring for the energy controls is sitting there. When those new units go in, they'll be connected, and we'll have a similar system. And that's a great question, Brad, because that's been something that, it's been great, because it's helped us really figure out where heating and cooling problems exist. But it's also meant a lot of repair and a lot of money has had to be spent over this past couple months. Because we're finding that, valves are not working, and heating units are not functioning in particular areas, and those controls have really pinpointed that for us. As Sheila Riffle knows firsthand, we've had a lot there, and at the middle school as well. But it does help. The new units at Goodwin should be efficient, they should be cost effective, as far as energy efficient, and then the controls on top of that should really help. I mean, we're doing a lot of long-term mitigating of costs.
And that the window replacement's gonna have a significant effect on comfort and use of oil, of gas.
You're projecting for, I know it's long-term, but for student-wise for next year, increase, decrease?
We are supposed to continue to decrease for the next 2 years, and then the projections show it leveling off around, I think we're looking at 1,250 to 1,300 at the final level off according to the projections. Of course, we have a project going on here in town potentially, and we met with Attorney Casella, had some questions about bus stop, and at the same time, we asked him questions about what they're projecting for numbers of students. And again, it's a bit of a dartboard, but I think he was saying something like an impact of about 60 plus students, which depending upon where they end up coming in, I would think, I'm just hypothesizing, the younger grades could have an impact. That could mean adding staff if they all come in a large group in like pre-K through 3 or even pre-K through 5.
And we have, there's 3 other items worth mentioning. The generator is one, and that's a generator in this building. Right now, there's a 30 kW generator in this building, which if any of you know anything about generators, that hardly runs a house today. It is very undersized, so the hope is to upgrade the generator here so that it can at least run things like our freezers, our boilers, the main components of a building that in a storm and a shutdown become pretty important. In addition to that, you probably recall from a lot of our turf discussions that one of the major plans that the board was hoping to move forward was as the turf field were to be installed, the 2 fields in the back were to hopefully get irrigation, because without in-ground sprinkler systems, we can put all the money we want into those fields and they will never look any better than they do now. So that's a project we can do over phases, and we have a two-year phase-in for that. And in addition to that, the high school has all original millwork and cabinetry in their classrooms, other than the new science wings and the new classrooms that we renovated 6 years ago or 7 years ago now. So we also have a phase-in, or have included a phase-in in that project to have new cabinets made. We'll install them. Our staff puts the cabinetry in, much like what we did at Goodwin. We replaced all the classrooms at Goodwin. This building is, 45 years old and has deplorable cabinets in their classrooms, as well as sinks and countertops in the bathrooms. They're also mostly original, and so we're going to be doing an upgrade to all of those, starting with the first floor. As you walk in the main entrance, those classrooms in the front there. But just to give you an idea, to do 3 classrooms, it's close to $50,000 of millwork. So it's going to be a project in phases, but we do need to address it. And we also just learned from our asbestos report that we still have a wing of asbestos tile at the high school. They're beginning to become loose and pop up. We had to remove some over vacation, which we were able to do. We have to bag them in a certain way and dispose of them a certain way. So as those tiles begin to age and the mastic underneath is drying out, we could have a large asbestos project coming up as well. So those are some of the things on the
Got an
horizon.
estimate on that?
I'm sorry?
You got an estimate on the project?
Well, to do a wing is probably $100,000. We wouldn't be able to do a whole wing at once. We've done half a wing at a time between the tile cost and the abatement. So they're big numbers.
Julie, is there a contractor, a local contractor incentive for the Board of Education similar to like the town of Old Saybrook? I think we've talked about that before.
We do use the
Yep.
same incentive, yes.
Yep.
But when it comes to things like asbestos projects or whatever, obviously those require,
And special.
very specialized.
But I mean, like millwork would be an example where a local contractor may be able to compete with any other bid you have.
Yes, that's the case. We have tried really hard to get people to do some of the millwork. Very few people today do formica work anymore. We'll do Corian countertops now in the new classroom, so we'll upgrade to Corian on counters. But the cabinetry is still, for mica or wood, and it's been difficult to find contractors who want to do those small jobs.
Understood.
Yeah, very difficult. But yes, we would put the bid out and hopefully try and get, we do have a local company that we've used for all of the Goodwin cabinets. They build beautiful, reasonable cabinetry, but we've only ever had 1 or 2 bids.
If you're asking some capital maintenance questions, they do have copies of the capital maintenance budget that was presented to the board last week too, so that might be helpful to you.
So I guess in having said all of that, Jan told you what she would like to see added to the budget, and
They didn't ask you.
Oh, I want you to see, what do you need?
Yeah, I think that's true.
I'd like to see a lot of things.
No, that
You want
was,
your cabinetry, right?
well, we do have projects that'll be coming down the pipe.
We are very fortunate to have some talented people on staff who can do some of the smaller projects in-house. And we've been moving along in that way.
You have a very good staff in house.
I know,
You guys are very good.
yes, I agree.
You're the best.
How's the IT upgrade going? There's a big issue in the fall and.
Yeah, going very well, actually. We are actually going to present tonight to the Board of Education about some ideas that we have. Our primary problem, there have been a couple of them, and Julie and Heston may also want to weigh in on this. We've had some infrastructure issues with wiring and with wireless. We even have a sort of an ancillary issue with perhaps some electrical, which we are addressing. We've had to commandeer some closets to make sure that we had equipment that was stored properly under the right conditions. That makes a difference. And then we've had some antiquated servers that, because of the expertise of the in-house folks, they've been able to keep them up and running. But it's only a matter of time, and as a matter of fact, they have been crashing on us. So it was time to make a decision about the direction to move in. We did a tech audit at the beginning of this year, and actually that gave us more information than we hoped for. It not only gave us infrastructure information, but also helped us solidify our ideas about how we use technology as a school district. And we now prefer to use the term digital tools for learning. I know it's a mouthful and it sounds like more educational gobbledygook, but we have to remind ourselves that the technology that we have is primarily here for students and teachers to do the work that they need to do. So with that in mind, we are moving forward in a direction that will not make us as vulnerable to those server dilemmas that cause a lot of our issues, that allow us to have better access and that still safeguard our material, which of course is everything that every business is worried about all the time. I don't know if Julie or Heston, you want to add anything else to the work, the considerable work that we're doing on IT?
Was there any notion of moving more towards cloud stuff, or?
Well, partially, yeah. And we're going to talk tonight about Microsoft 365. And the pause button was pressed primarily by me because of my concerns about safety and security, our students' data, just their day-to-day conversations. And so it was being proposed that we move in one direction, and when we looked into the way that company does business, that company remained nameless, but you all know it, we decided that our students' information was not going to be mined for salespeople. So we're coming up what we think is a responsible middle road that allows us to use some in-house server storage and some remote storage.
Other questions? That was easy. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. It's great being
Thanks for
here.
coming early. And congratulations on your award, on the Cave Award, the Distinction Award. It's my first opportunity since November to tell you. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
And See you soon.
Okay, we'll send that presentation to you.
That'd be great.
We'll send it to Jerry, and she'll send it out to all of you, is
It's
that?
probably the easiest way.
Okay. Thank you.
Are you going to adjourn?
Yeah, so motion adjourned?
So moved.
We're going to recess until our official meeting time. So we're in recess, Board of Education's in recess.
Absolutely.
So members of the Board of Education, it's 7:30, and even though we officially started our meeting with the joint meeting with the Board of Finance, we don't actually have to say our pledge of allegiance again. We did it once, we did it when we were in, but George is going to regale us in another rendition of the Pledge of Allegiance. But no, just thank you, George. But we're going to basically just come out of a recess. I had to do that, as you know, because we posted our regular meeting to start at 7:30. So according to the public meeting laws, we actually can't deal with anything on the agenda for the 7:30 meeting until 7:30. So thank you all for your extra time. We've already talked about different strategies for next year to try to avoid that lag time for everybody. But thank you very much. So we have called ourselves to order. We've done the Pledge of Allegiance. Is there anyone in the audience who's not going to present to us tonight in otherwise, which would like to present to the board?
Just a quick question. The WebEx and whatnot that's been played with, when will that be accessible, or how will it be accessible? As much as I like recording these meetings, I would rather have your WebEx be doing it, because I've been doing other town meetings, so.
So can you say
Actually,
just a little
that
something
now.
about that?
Yeah, we've been in an IT personnel change.
Okay.
I think we are pretty much ready now. This may be the first one that will get up and running completely. We were hoping to have our new website, so it would be nice and seamless, new website, WebEx, everything posted, but that's not gonna happen in time. So this one, we are hoping to get up on the website.
And it will be posted on the website?
Yes.
And for archive purposes, what do you guys?
We're going to keep them on the website. I think we decided 3 meetings?
Yeah, 3 meetings at a time will be up there, and then they'll be
They'll
kept
rotate
if someone
out.
makes a request. It's just that we only have so much space to keep them available right there, so. As I understood what
That's
you all
right.
described last time.
That's right.
So if I requested the data, they would be able to do it, and then like I could post it up on YouTube?
We'd have to ask
The
somebody with
reason I'm
more
saying
technical
is
knowledge.
that the archive purposes are very important for
Yeah.
more than 3 meetings, so, so if the
I don't
file.
know the answer to the accessibility fees, so I have to ask.
Okay. The other question is, so I don't tie up the time, is there a specific way to request, like what I'm asking right now? Would there be a correct channel to not tie up, like you guys have late nights? So is there like somebody I should email to where I'm not bothering you directly,
Yeah.
Jan? Is there
In
just a
the-
protocol that we could, the town people could say, hey, I have a question, get an answer without?
Yeah, if your question is, can I have access to the minutes, I think we would channel that through my assistant, Frank
Okay.
Gerbers.
So if we put all questions that way, people know that, then there could be, it would be dealt with.
Yeah.
Okay, good,
Yeah.
thanks.
So I'm gonna write down the question that I have to ask, and we'll get back to you about the accessibility for downloading or using it in another way.
Okay.
Once we move it into archive, I just don't know the answer.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay, any other requests for citizens' comment? All right, hearing none, and also not seeing any Board of Education student reps. Well, I'm not sure if they knew we were gonna be here, or?
Actually, they phoned today and said that because it was exam week, they wanted to be
Excellent,
excused from tonight.
excellent, good idea. All right, correspondence, is there anything for summary?
I do, I just have one thing, and it's just a thank you note from Mrs. Petrozello, Monica, thanking the board for all of the well wishes for her husband's recovery. And that's all right now. It'll be on the clipboard.
Okay, thank you very much. We have the Board of Education regular meeting minutes of January 6th, 2015. First of all, Trent, did anyone call in any corrections? Is there are there any corrections at this point then for the Board of Education or comments? Can I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes from the 6th of January?
So moved.
Eileen, seconded by
Second.
what's your name again?
It's Karen.
I know. And any question on the motion to approve the minutes from the 6th? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Okay, so Holly will abstain. Otherwise, they pass.
Just
All right.
reflect, she's not back yet, so.
What we'll reflect, what we'll do is
The numbers may be.
Trent and or Karen keep track, so when Kelly comes back in, the meeting minutes will note when she entered the room for the regular part of the meeting. But thank you for that, you know. All right, so if there's no objection from the board, we've got a couple of folks here who are going to make presentations, and I'd like to get them on the agenda early and then let them leave. We always defer to the people who are having trouble getting around, so we'll do the Honduras trip first, and we wish you well. Come on, yeah, but you can stay there.
If I could just say, this is Ms. Sherber's second time coming to us. She's already
Right.
talked about this once before she even went to students and began to speak to them about it. And you had given her an opportunity to go out and speak to students and to get some chaperones, and I think we are further down the road.
We are further down the road. Thank you very much for this opportunity to come back and talk to you this evening. So with our trip to Honduras, we put it out to the entire school and asked if there was any interest, and there was quite a bit of interest. When students realized that it wasn't necessarily a vacation, but that it was going to be a working trip, some of that interest may have shifted. And so we were left with 13 students and 2 chaperones. Myself and Curtis Gillette, who is a math teacher at the high school, has volunteered to come with me. One of those students over the last weekend experienced a spontaneous pneumothorax, which means that one of his lungs collapsed. So he has been advised to not scuba dive probably ever, but definitely not to scuba dive in the next year. So he has had to remove himself from the trip. So we have removed him from the trip, and I've made the necessary phone calls to the individuals that are running our trip. That leaves us with 12 students attending. That would be 6 males and 6 females to go on our trip in July. So with that being said, our trip would start with us leaving from JFK, and we would fly to San Salvador, and from San Salvador we would go into San Pedro Sula in Honduras. We would spend overnight in Grand Hotel Sula. The next morning, getting up bright and early, like 7 o'clock, and attending an informational meeting with other schools that are attending this trip. We'd then board a bus. We take a 4-hour trip to La Ceiba, which is located right about here. Once we're there, we get on a catamaran ferry. We're on the ferry for about an hour and a half, depending on weather conditions. Sometimes that can be a little bit longer. It's always concerning when you get on the ferry and they hand you a barf bag. But they are very quick with removing those as soon as someone gets sick, motion sickness. So we take the ferry from here and we will go to Roatan. Roatan will be there for a week where we'll do some diving, those of us that will be scuba certified. To date, there are 2 individuals, myself and 1 student, who will be scuba certified before we leave. All the other students, as well as Mr. Gillette, will be getting scuba certified there. So once we're there, we'll do our research, we'll attend reef ecology courses during the day, and postdocs and PhDs will give us presentations in the evening. We'll dive twice a day. If we have anyone who is uncomfortable with diving, given that we have a large number of students who have not experienced scuba before, we may have a few students who get there and just realize it's not their thing, and that's okay. So what they can do is they'll then snorkel for the duration of the trip, and that's fine. We're really trying to devise some individual research projects that students can work on at both levels, in case we have any students who determine that's what they prefer. Once we're there for a week, we'll then get back on the ferry and come back to La Ceiba. Once we're in La Ceiba, we'll then take a bus, about an hour and a half trip to Tela. That'll be the second week of our trip. So usually what happens is that you dive for about 6 days, diving twice a day. Then you have a degassing day where your body just kind of recollects itself, really. And that'll be our travel day. And our travel day will take us to Tela, where we'll remain another week. And then at the end of that week, we will then transfer back to San Pedro Sula, to the airport, board a plane, and then head on back here to tell you about our adventure. So what I did is I kind of went through. I know many of you won't be able to read this, but it kind of breaks it down as to what we're doing on a daily basis. So are we diving? Are we in a reef ecology class? And kind of what's going to happen on a daily basis. This kind of tells you what sort of lectures we might be experiencing, the importance of mangroves, looking at different habitats, looking at coral reef. Can we identify certain reef fish? Okay, therefore, if we can identify those fish, can we now go and do a fish count? okay, which can help further biodiversity research in that particular area. I was contacted by a PhD who will be on Roatan this summer, and he's really interested in me getting groups of maybe 1 or 2 students together to do individual projects. So rather than us all collaborating on one large project, we may be collaborating on a multitude of projects, which would be really great. And lend itself, I think, to a lot of diverse conversation when we come back. The second week, once we go to Tela again, those that got scuba certified that first week will now be in the reef ecology class. Those of us who are already scuba certified will now be doing additional research, okay, when we get to this site. Again, still attending the nightly lectures that will be announced to us when we arrive. That'll depend on which PhDs are specific to that endeavor. When we're in Roatan, it's going to be primarily high school students and PhDs, which is great. When we're in Tela, there may be some postdoc students there as well. So if I was to break it down for you and take a look at the cost, what we've been able to do is kind of keep that cost low in respect to a 2-week trip that's going to include all of your meals, that's going to include all of your housing, and also the classes that we'll take, the university classes that we'll take while we're there. So the fixed cost would probably be about $29.81, okay, to date. That means I've already put in preliminary reservations for flight and talked to people about internal costs. So this internal travel cost is our transfers from the airport to the hotel, our overnight in the hotel, our breakfast the next morning, our ferry costs, and then our travel back to the airport. Okay, so this also includes our transfer between the 2 sites as well. When we look down here, a park entry fee, usually you have to pay about $20 for the marine fees. That'll be included in our internal transfer fee. So that cost has been integrated up here. These costs are additional costs. This is another $180 for the 2 weeks, but it's dependent on what materials people bring. If people get a snorkel and a mask, they don't have to rent that. If people have fins, they don't have to rent that. So this cost should only go down respective to what anybody brings. Obviously, I'm not expecting anyone to bring their regulators or their tanks or any of that stuff. That stuff's all there and manageable in cost-wise. So when we looked at the total cost, this total cost is about $32.42. Initially, I had said I wanted to try and keep the cost about $3,200, and we tried to keep that as close as possible. It was below that before I had a student drop out. So I was really excited, and then I wasn't so much. So just so you have a point of reference, the final cost in 2012 was about $28.50. So we're only about $400 off, and we're 3 years later. So that's not too bad. Also, the students have some fundraising efforts in the works. And what they're anticipating is, oftentimes when you go and you present to a group of individuals, they want to know what specific can they help you with. Not, can you just give me some money, but what can you tell me that I'm contributing to your trip? And so last time when we spoke to the Lions Club, they said, can we just pay for your exit taxes? And they did. They gave us a grant that just covered all the exit taxes for all the individuals participating. So the kids are going to present to the Lions Club on March 24th, okay? They've also talked to another group, possibly the Rotary, that may help to cover the trip to and from the airport, so may cover the cost of the coach. It's not set, but it's a possibility. So just so that you know that the students are not set in stone at $32.42, they are working to help reduce that cost across the board. So what efforts have they put into motion? Right now, they're selling shares of their trip, and they have thus raised about $200 collectively. They have a car wash scheduled for May 3rd. They're going to talk to the Lions group on March 24th, and then they're going to hold a pasta dinner fundraiser on the 27th. Jerry Lewis, who is the president of the Estuary Board, has secured that date for us at the Estuary, so we have a site, and she's helping to work with us to possibly get all the food, some of the food, if not all of the food, donated, which would mean that anything the students made that night would only go to help defray the cost for the trip. So that's kind of where we're at. I meet with the parents every other month to have a conversation about where we're at, what does it look like, any questions or concerns they've had. We've talked about how to get their passports. We've talked about any concerns about safety. We have somebody coming to speak to our group in April who was on site last year and who will be returning this year. So she can speak directly to that, having gone in and out of the country in the last year.
Great.
Any questions?
Yeah,
Sure.
any questions?
The distribution of students in various grades, it says the number of students, but.
Okay, so in distribution of grades, it's really current sophomores and juniors. I'm not taking anyone who's a senior because they will have graduated before I've taken them on the trip. And so I did have 3 other students who were interested, but because they didn't qualify in that criteria, they will have graduated in June, and we don't go on the trip until July. And so we really reserved it for upcoming juniors and seniors.
They're not necessarily involved in any particular classes in any way?
No, ma'am, it was open to the entire school, and it was anybody who will be age 16 by the time we go on the trip.
And I appreciate it. The question I was gonna ask is about the medical information, because you can be pretty far away and then you know.
We are pretty far away, and there is an additional policy that, Julie and I will have a conversation about that we took out last time, and there's also coverage that's included in the expedition cost.
And is there like the closest hospital nearby? How does that work?
Closest hospital, I can't answer that. I can tell you that there's a decompression chamber within 30 minutes, and that there is medical staff on site in each of the sites that we'll be attending. So MDs at both sites. To date, the only person that they've had to medevac out has been the herpetologist, because he got bit by a snake, and it was their herpetologist. So to date, that's the only information. But on site, they do keep all of that information on their website that we can go and reference at any time. So they really are very transparent with any concerns they may have.
Yeah.
Excellent. Any other questions? Vito?
Yes.
Is there thanks for doing this, but
Absolutely.
Is there a contingency plan, just in case you're not?
I will be.
Okay.
But
That's fine.
I will be. I'm very determined.
Good.
Water therapy is great. They have assured me that it shouldn't be a problem. I may just have to snorkel more than dive, and that's been thus far. They don't seem to see a problem with it because I have brought that up.
Yeah.
Jen?
I just have one question. I took a group of students to Costa Rica a number of years ago. We did have some trouble with phone service, and you've been to this site.
I have, and I'm glad you brought that up because last time I was told that we would have phone service, and I didn't. But they had a landline, and so I used their landline because they also didn't have. I was told there would be internet service, but. Mañana means a very different thing in a lot of different languages. So mañana, it'll be fixed. And that was a week. So, and there were pluses and minuses, I'll tell you. Being a week off the grid was really a good thing for the students. They were really engaged. And it wasn't until a weekend that you saw moms calling and young boys crying, which is always very sad, because their moms miss them and then they miss their moms. And so that was very emotional. But back to your point. I was able to use the landline. My cell phone didn't work. I was told by Verizon that it would work. I will try and make sure that I have a means of communication before I leave this time. I will make sure it works before.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yes, Karen.
Is there a need for travel insurance for a trip like this?
There is travel insurance, and I have had the travel agent that I'm working with build that in. It's about $25 to $30 a student, but I felt that it was a good thing to have, just in case,
Right.
because you never know as we get closer to that date. Absolutely.
Are there any other general questions at this point? And then I think they would like to have approval tonight. This is the second time.
Yes, if possible, that would be great.
Yeah, I would like to, since you have come back the second time, move this forward as, move the field trip request as an action item.
Okay, moved by Karen. Is there a second to make it an action item tonight, Kelly? And so let's, all those in favor of making it an action item for tonight, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Okay, so that passes. And so now we can move the thing and then we can have questions on the motion. So Karen?
Right, so I'd like to make a motion to approve the field trip request to Honduras in July.
Seconded by Karen. All right, any questions on the motion to approve the trip? Hearing, okay, one more, go ahead, please. That's okay.
Just, is there any way for the students to circle back on the project after they leave? So
They can. There is that continuation piece, and that's one of the reasons I mentioned that when I talked to the PhD. I don't know if you heard when I mentioned it, but a PhD from Roatan called me today and wanted to know what sort of students I had and what interests they had, and they have a lot of different research projects that they're working on currently, and they're looking for groups of 1 and 2 to really do many more projects rather than us working as a collective. And I had mentioned that to him. I asked him what sort of follow-up there would be, and he said there would be an opportunity for them to have a teleconference a year later if they wanted to see where their research had gone, because I knew that that was an interest of yours last time.
Right, and then I think I asked you about this last time too, but the publication piece, so I.
And the publication piece, he said it does belong to the PhDs,
Obviously.
but that it's mentioned as an Operation Wallacea. It's made as a blanket statement, not as an individual statement.
Not necessarily for publication rights
Right.
for the students themselves, where they get listed as an author. I know that that's a hard shot, but
Right.
For them to at least kind of see what the process is.
Right. And so then they'll have that opportunity to talk to whatever postdoc they work with a year later to see where they are, how close they may be to publishing. Absolutely.
Okay, great.
So I think that that'd
They
be
should get a
wonderful.
footnote, though.
Yeah, exactly. True.
Research assistant. Anything else? Any other questions on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? All right, thank you so much. and good
Perfect.
luck
Thank you
with
all
your-
very much for your time. I appreciate
your
it.
recovery.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so again, to try to be courteous to our various guests, we are going to have the Oak Park folks come up, and they are going to, one, give us an update with the help from Kelly and Jan, and on the Windows, Julie, of course, on the Windows project, and then they're going to give us a status report on where the middle school roof project is. So we'll have both of those, but we'll start with Goodwin School. Does that make the most sense? Right. And we are actually being asked to approve some things tonight, because you need to be able to go to get these other approvals after we give you the go-ahead, right? All right, very good. So Kelly, Jan, Julie, I don't know who's going to do a lead-in, or if you're just going to make a presentation.
I think we're ready to hear
All
it.
right, great, thanks.
There's drawings
Yes.
from the middle school, but we're talking about Goodwin first.
Mhm.
We went to a local review a few weeks ago with the building inspector and the fire marshal, and everything was a go with that. Our next step is to go to back to the Bureau of School Facilities, and that's on the 4th, February 4th, and everything should be fine at that point. And after that, we can go out to bid on Goodwin. And we talked about that this morning in a subcommittee meeting. We also talked about the middle school, and we have brought examples of some of our drawings, just to give you an idea of the progress and what the drawings look like. But those are the two drawings right there, two of the drawings that we have. So we reviewed this morning in the subcommittee, and then Peter and I also met with a roofing contractor today to kind of go over the details, see if they saw anything that we could kind of enhance or improve upon. They made a few suggestions, and we are putting those into place, but nothing significant. A couple of little tweaks on the drawings and on the specification. So, and we are going to local review next Tuesday for the roof. And then after that, we will be going to the school facilities on the 4th with this as well. So we'll be doing both on the 4th. And again, going out to bid after that.
I don't know if Kelly or Jan or
So,
do they want to add anything to this?
those are the main points. The only other thing that we discussed really in the subcommittee this morning was, before going out to bid after state approval, that the subcommittee would recommend to the board that we might bring in a specialist lawyer, a construction lawyer that's working on the turf project as well, to review the bid, initial bid, before it
contract.
goes out, so that we can ensure that it meets the appropriate.
Good idea.
And I did make a phone call, Peter and Lori, to the State Department this morning, because I was curious as to why they hadn't given us a permanent number. So I talked to Paige directly, Paige Barnes. She's the only person, I think, left in the Bureau that we all know. And she said, obviously submit the drawings with the temporary number, but she was going to actually, she pulled the file and said she couldn't see why they hadn't moved the project. Everything that they needed was there. So my hope is that she said she would get back to me in the next day or two, and we may have the permanent number before the drawings have to be completed. So I'll certainly keep you in the loop, but I just wanted you to know that there's no reason why that hasn't moved forward. They couldn't figure out why it was sitting there, so.
So tonight, we're just asking for approval so that we can go to local review next week.
Okay. Board members, questions? Yes.
Quick question, I mean, I guess in your timeline, at what point do you anticipate that you actually will know exactly what the format of the windows and or doors are gonna look like at Goodwin, and then given that, whether you be able to complete the project, how long it takes to complete the project, given, right, we have to, you couldn't really start to the end of school, and it's gonna finish before school starts, and the end of school, all
Well, by going out to bid, hopefully by the end of February, bid should come in, get approved, and at that point, depending on the numbers, the subcommittee can debate whether it's a choice or whether the money has kind of made the choice for you as far as doors and windows. And the intent is that we will be able to do the submittal process, which is looking through the shop drawings and approving the shop drawings and getting everything ordered so that when school is out, the construction, they can start actually working right there and get the work done in the summer. And we talked this morning about the calendar, knowing when school starts in the fall is going to be helpful for the contractors to know.
I think let me just jump in for a second. I think that we will set an end date in the construction documents when they're supposed to be finished. Now we think that the window project, there might be a little leeway in the sense that they may be able to work on the office area after school begins, because that's just simple. They pull windows out and put it back in, and they can do that actually after school. So Jan and I and Julie and Laurie will talk about this as soon as we get approval from the school facility. We didn't want to go ahead and talk about this until we actually got the approval, so we now can set dates. So we basically will set an end date and also tell the contractor when they can expect to start, because we really don't know when the last day of school is at this point. Same thing with the roof project. We'll set both start dates and end dates. We're hoping that by the time, because we're going out fairly early in the year, by the time school ends in mid-June and so forth, they actually have all the material in place. That's what we're looking for, because then they can just go ahead and do the work instead of waiting for stuff to come. And hopefully, they have plenty of time to set up, plenty of time to staff up, plenty of time to order materials, and everything's approved off so they can actually have all the stuff purchased and ready to go. So we should just be able to roll right into the project.
But in terms of total time, 9 weeks is probably most you guys have.
Yeah, it's the roof project. I don't see that as a real problem.
That's a problem.
Yeah.
Windows and doors.
Windows and door project is a tight schedule. They will have to.
Excuse me.
But the contractor knows.
Sure.
That's the time frame they have. They will have to the people who bid on this project will have to have a big enough crew, or 2 crews, if you will, to work on the project. They have to staff up properly. I don't, a single crew, we did a project similar to this 2 summers ago in Clinton. We did 12 classrooms in one summer, single crew. There's only like 2 people working, 3 people working. They were able to get that done very easily. So they put 2 crews on this, probably. I mean, the firm will have to figure out what the manpower would be and get it done.
And one of the things that we will also have to keep in mind is when you put an end date on a project or phases or however we decide to sort of phase this project out, it can have a significant impact on the price. So you have to kind of balance the phasing of the project in a reasonable way that you know who your respectful bidders are, who will be able to provide the crews and so forth. If they have to put 2nd and 3rd shift crews on, that drives the price of the project up considerably. So we're going to have to look at all of those pieces, George. And we'll work with our as Kelly said, with our construction attorney, because he can also offer us, I think, some very valid information as to how to phase that.
Peter.
Yeah, we are to an advantage because Labor Day's later this year. So kids come back like the 7th of September. We actually have about another week, you know. Staff comes back a little later.
Other questions?
Second?
Second.
I'm sorry, second.
Still, it is
Which is still, I think, 4 days early, yeah.
And then we'll potentially be able to have some slack in the schedule, as Peter was noting, in the administrative wing, so that'll give us a little bit of
And the
time.
gym, I mean,
Right.
there's definitely some areas that we can define that are less disruptive than classrooms. We're gonna wanna make sure classrooms are done, you know, in a systematic way. And then there are even some classrooms that we can possibly outline that, you know, may not be used as often as a regular classroom. So, you know, we'll have to look at all of that.
Other questions from the Board of Ed? Okay. So at this point, what we need to do in order for you all to be able to do the local, out for local review, et cetera, and prepare bid documents that will be reviewed by the attorney, and I presume come back to us for official approval, but we can talk about that. Well, I know what we have to do right now is we have to approve the plans as they were presented, so you can take the next steps in this process, the approval process. So Kelly is.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the plans and specifications for the Old Saybrook Middle School roofing project, number TMP-106-GNXF as presented.
Great, and when we're done with this, you just give that to
course.
Trent. So we have a motion to approve this as presented with all the particulars in the motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
Okay, that's right, our other committee member, Karen and Kelly. And so, any discussion on the motion to approve the plans as they're presented to us, so that the next steps can be taken? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, passes again. Thank you very much on that one. And now we just did the Goodwin School windows and project, right? So now we're going to talk about the middle school, or we don't have to do anything on the middle school yet?
That was,
No, I knew you talked about it. We don't have to take any action on it?
That was the action.
That was the middle school? Oh, I apologize. I got the numbers wrong. Okay. So then I think we're done.
Yep.
All right, thanks.
Thank you all very much.
Wow. All right. So, we are now to our other project, turf, track, and tennis court update. Phil, anything we need to know at this point?
Guerrera
Thanks.
had suggested that they would like to present, have prospective material tested at this point, instead of waiting until later on and the like. So they did present some materials to BSC, and BSC has rejected the materials that Carrera has recently come up with. So this information, I guess, has been passed off to our attorney, and
Okay.
not sure what the status is at this point. Guess we're waiting for a recommendation from the attorney.
We just passed it off to the attorney as soon as we heard from the engineer architect, simply because we wanted him to be able to weigh in about why this was being rejected. So he's had a conversation, or is planning to have a conversation, I'm not sure if it's taken place yet, with the construction company's attorney, I'm sorry, the engineer's attorney, to try to work together to make sure that we are rejecting, that we're doing everything that they should be doing, that they're rejecting it in accordance with the contract. And really, that's what he does now at this point. He's just safeguarding to make sure we're following the contract at every step. We certainly can't weigh in on the quality of the stone that's been submitted, but we can certainly have an attorney make sure that we are not doing anything that would in any way violate contract.
Well, it's a good thing they did this earlier on, as opposed to they were going to test it and then put together a model and then move forward really quickly right before, so.
Yeah, I think the concern was having BSCs, they suggested that if the materials were tested early, too early, that when it came time to bring the materials in, that the original source of the original material might not be available.
We don't want this material to be available, so this is
so far Guerrera hasn't come up with anything that works, so I think we'd be happy if something did work, first of all.
Yeah.
So if we, I mean, it's great we found this out, but if we have further testing soon, and they found some quality material, would we purchase that and kind of hold it and store it as we're doing the turn? We
Yeah.
can't do that.
Well, I think it just stays in the quarry, but we
Yeah.
could probably have some agreement as to that's our patch, right?
Yeah, my understanding is the quarry was unwilling to do that. They didn't
Oh.
want to excavate that material and then store it on site. So I don't think that that's an option at this point. And at this point, I do need to put it on the table. I do need to begin to say to people, we're looking not only at our spring sports, but at the end of our end of year activities that go on at the high school that may be impacted. We have to remember our promises. We said we would get this right, and it may take more time than any of us could possibly have imagined. But I think we still have to be committed to getting it right.
So
Kelly?
what is the benefit of doing any testing now then? Maybe I'm not understanding. If you select the material and you can't hold it until we're actually using it, and then they'll have to retest when we get it here too, why are we testing now and are we being charged for it, I guess?
They just tried to pull it.
Well,
Do we know?
my understanding is that Guerrero wanted to do it at this time, and BSC wanted to wait a little bit longer. But, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think it would be I'd like to know that Guerrero can actually come up with material that's okay. I feel a little certain amount of comfort in that. The fact that they still haven't come up with it.
And I can't remember, I believe it was at the subcommittee meeting,
Yeah.
at the board meeting, that the question arose, well, what about this quarry? I mean, if it's, is it a problem? But the quarry also was the one that produced the,
East Line.
whatever it is for East Line.
Yeah.
So in other words, the quarry has been
Yeah.
putting in things that have been draining for turf fields at other high schools.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the issue is here, but we're gonna follow the lawyer's guidance on following every step in the contract. And, I agree with you. I actually asked the same question last time, why are we doing this so early, at the subcommittee level? And they said, well, better,
And I think the engineer did put a stop to the concept of doing a mock-up now.
Yeah,
Yes.
right.
Because
Yeah,
that made
that would make
absolutely
no
no
sense.
sense.
Right.
Hard to replicate the experience that we're gonna have in the spring, and so they've put a stop to that. But in fact, perhaps this has worked out for the best, because they've had this opportunity to say, this sample is not gonna cut it, and that, they're saying that in January and not in March.
Right.
So maybe that gives time for a fix-up strategy. But we have not heard back from the company, from the construction company, after that rejection letter.
Kelly?
So then are they going after multiple source pathways at once, or are they just sticking with this one quarry and hoping to get a sample that works in time? I mean, if we're not sure that it's gonna work, I would think that they maybe investigate.
My understanding is they've been working with this one quarry all along, and I believe our engineer would tell us that that comes under means and methods, and he can't dictate how they move forward with that they can go to whatever quarry they want. And as Chairman Gabbery said, the quarry has not been a topic of discussion. There's no one who has said, this isn't a legit quarry. It's a big company. We've done multiple projects that we're aware of, and I'm sure far more. But I almost, in a strange way, I almost see this as knowing now is better than finding out later.
Mm-hmm.
And having this information at this point in the year might turn out to be better for us in the long run.
And quarries are natural, sites, so you can have different results depending on where they're mining the materials from, so.
And these are mixes, so it's not like we're just pulling it out of one spot, crushing it, and it comes here delivered. It's a blend, they're mixing from multiple sources, so, and now I'm beyond my knowledge base, but I think that at this point, you could be looking at one particular source or one particular vein, and that's what the kind of discussion that's been going on at the subcommittee meeting.
And the blend as well, right?
How they put it together.
So,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No.
So, I understand we're saying that we'd rather find it out now rather than later, but we're not even dealing with what we're even going to have at the end of the day. Do you know what I mean?
Right, so they have to come up with another
Yeah, they have to
sample
make
now.
more.
And that all takes time, so it's actually, I think what Jan is saying, it's good that it's early, because now they have time to produce another sample or another blend and see if that meets the specification better than what they produced the first time.
So then if they come up with another blend that works, can we, I thought that earlier you said, maybe I misunderstood, that we can't reserve or whatever that.
No, but every so many truckloads, like if that blend is acceptable,
Mhm.
then when they go to actually pull that material out of the quarry,
Mhm.
every, I don't know, it's every 3 truckloads, every 2 truckloads, whatever it is, we'll have to go through the testing to make sure that it's the right blend and the right material that's coming on site. So there is a method once they've identified what that blend should be.
And just to add to what Julie said, we've been told by the engineer architect is that they will be sampling at the site this time. The mock-up would be done closer to the time that we're going to be putting the base in. But prior to that, these abrasion tests and the sieve tests, they will continue to do those. And actually, this sample passed one of those and not the other one. The sieve, but not the abrasion.
All right, the only question I have, Phil, is have we had the old stuff removed? Has that been
Yes.
observed appropriately? And
Yeah.
BSC,
Well,
that's not yet?
They've removed some.
Some, okay.
But the weather changed and they decided that rather than disturb the base if some of it had begun to freeze,
Okay.
they didn't want to touch it, so
it's-
they're not
we're
resuming.
totally closed down at this point?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
All right, well, that's just an update, and, we're gonna, again, follow legal counsel in terms of following the contract, and that's pretty much it for now. All right, the 14-15 budget update, Jan and Julie. Where are we with 14-15?
So 14-15, as I said in the brief memo with the superintendent, we just closed out December 30th on the 2 quarters of the fiscal year. We're in the process right now of looking at any changes from the first quarterly projection to the second quarter projection. At first glance, we haven't been through all the accounts yet. We're working through most of the salary accounts at this point. There doesn't appear to be anything glaring. Don't expect the second quarter projection to be significantly different from what you received first quarter, which obviously projects us through June 30th. And, we know of a couple of salary changes and things that have happened with staffing, but no surprises. Knock on wood, I don't really want to jinx ourselves and say that, we're holding our own with other repairs and maintenance at this point. So nothing glaring out at us at this point. We'll be coming back to you in January once the second quarter projection is done with the final numbers.
Questions about where we are with 14-15?
I just have a question.
Yep.
It's just more of a procedural one. Do we have a substitute for the district? So one person that we call that's always on call, because I just look at, we spend a lot for substitutes, which is pretty natural.
We have insurance.
We have 2 interns, right? And they get called first.
So those are free.
Well, they're not free because we pay for interns.
Yeah,
So
so
it's about equal to what it would cost to have a sub every day.
And they come from what college?
University of New Hampshire.
Okay, teaching.
Any other questions on where we are with 14-15? All right, 2015-16 budget presentation, which pretty much we had earlier in our joint meeting with the Board of Finance. So at this point, is there more to present to us?
Yeah.
And then we'll begin our deliberations on the superintendent's budget as it's been presented to the board.
So we have a few additional slides to share with you this evening. We won't go back to the first 5 that you've seen twice already. But we do have some additional ones that break some information down, things that we anticipated you might ask about, and broke those out. And so they begin with slide 6. Right there, that's where it begins. I'm sorry, slide 7. one of the things that we like to do is look at ourselves in comparison with similar communities in the area when we're looking at per pupil expenditure. And we've listed ourselves, we used these same school districts last year, and we've listed ourselves with those districts. And we're all suffering from the small district dilemma. There's no commodity of scale, obviously. As enrollment drops, it's not one-to-one that you drop staff with enrollment numbers. So I anticipate, this number did go up a little from last year. I anticipate that that will continue until those enrollment numbers level off. And then we continue to look at staffing every time we see enrollment changes. Again, we've been dropping by about 40 or 50 students overall from the beginning of one year to the beginning of the next year. So while that continues, you're going to see the dollar amount in per pupil expenditure go up because it's not obviously in one grade or even one school that you see the number changes. And I think our next page gives you our enrollment. So that's just a study since 2010-11, and it says it all. And as best we can tell from our projections, about 2 years from now, we're going to level off somewhere in the 1,250 to 1,300 range. And again, this is not a story that's unique to Old Saybrook. It is very common in Connecticut and very common in the Northeast region, with few exceptions. And then the next page is going to outline our staffing, which is going down, but obviously not at the rate, and never will, at the rate the enrollment is changing. And this is a slight change from last time. We had originally looked at 2.8 positions. And when I say positions, these are not necessarily, there's only one full position here being cut. There are pieces of other positions, but it's actually a 1.8 reduction. There was a miscalculation at the middle school. And the next screen has come. And we provided this for you last year. You have a whole strategic planning section in your budget book. But what we did is we just pulled out some of the highlights of how the strategic plan is moving forward, where we think we're going to be asking for resources in 15-16 based on the work being done in 14-15. Some of them are repeats from this current year. Some of them are new. Under assessing programs, implementation of pilot programs, that has some new expense with it. Continued Connecticut core curriculum implementation, and corresponding professional development that goes along with these initiatives, plus the professional development I was talking about earlier in the evening, drive dollars for strategy 1. And this is not different money. This is just a different way of breaking out that money that's being requested in the superintendent's budget. Strategy 2 is communication. We continue with website design and implementation. There'll be some little bits and pieces to continue to put together to tweak it and make it better next year. We continue to look at digital tools for learning, at the bring your own device policy that we have and how we're implementing that, on modifications to infrastructure. And Mr. Sutton's going to talk a little bit about one of the directions that we think we know we want to go in to some degree, and maybe be looking to either make some investments but also have some savings in those areas. Strategy 3 is social and emotional needs, and it's providing educational opportunities to meet the diverse learning styles and educational needs to prepare students for college and the world of work. And what we really mean by that is we want to reach all of our students. We want to make sure that we're capturing interests of students at all grade levels and helping them grow in the way they want to. That's a lot of what student success planning and personalized learning is about, which we believe in philosophically. Again, that's an expensive model. And so we find ways to make it work, to share resources, but in a small district, it's you know, you have a push and pull on all of the different resources. Next screen, thank you. Strategy 4, data and differentiation. Create and streamline assessments and provide professional development for effective use of student data to inform instruction. We just applied for a grant, a state grant, about reducing assessments, ironically, And we're looking for ways to streamline our assessments to get the most out of each assessment that we give. But this is actually a process that requires that you put some financial resources behind it. And we already have a way of breaking down our data, and we have our software to do that. And now we're looking for how to wring the most information out of each assessment that we give. And that process of streamlining will take some things off the plate, but we're doing it in a really thoughtful way, and it's a process. And hopefully we'll get some grant money to help us with that. Strategy 5, character education, which includes guidance programs. Right now, you'll see them in each of our schools under titles like advisory, pride, behavior intervention, PBIS, climate and culture. So all that the initials and the jargon really mean what we're doing to improve climate and culture for students and our staff, to make sure that we feel that students are developing their character through our curriculum and our extracurricular activities. Our athletic director extracurricular position is really about promoting that. And personal success plans, planning for student success through developmental guidance, advisory, and professional development. And it's very related to character education and to critical thinking and getting students to set goals for themselves, having them feel that they're engaged in their own learning. And again, it is a very differentiated, individualized model that we are moving towards all the time, and you'll see lots of it going on in our schools already, and we want to do more of it, but it's also a model that can be quite pricey. So we have to do it in a way that's thoughtful. And then finally, in the critical thinking, we're just highlighting the money that is being spent on digital tools for learning, and things like our manufacturing and engineering program at the high school and middle school. We're trying to build experiences that are authentic, that augment learning in other classrooms, and that prepare students even better for the world of work and college beyond our school.
Before you move on, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
So the character education area, I remember my interactions with that area and that committee, and a lot of the discussion was on not how character education is sort of a theme that runs through all those various things that you're talking about there, but a focused character education program, and taking a look at what we do at the different buildings, and is that still appropriate, something we want to do. There are lots of other things you can pull off the shelf, the character counts kind of stuff, or other ones, and so I just want to make sure that at the right time we're taking a look at that as well. Not just are we doing character education and advisory and behavioral interventions and climate and culture, but do we have a coherent, focused character education program of some sort? And that doesn't have to be next year, but that was a big part of what the committee, who was on that? I can't remember. You were on that subcommittee. That was a big part of what I think they were talking about respect at the middle school and some of the other models that are in different other places. And so to take a step back and to take a look at those and just see if we want to continue in that vein or go somewhere else. And there was a big connection to the social emotional subcommittee, which was the one that I was on, in the sense of, all that stuff's great, the anti-bullying and the increasing the climate, improving the climate, this and that. But the idea was that character education could help in the sense of students behaving better, which means that might be another way to get at reducing bullying and some of the other antisocial and difficult behaviors that, in a more proactive way, as opposed to letting an incident occur and then trying to respond to an incident, that you could try to inculcate more in the culture through an educational program. So just want to make sure that that's still on the radar screen, and not that you're going to do anything different than what you've currently budgeted for, but down the line, I think we really do want to get back to that particular basic, which is a character education, revisiting our character education program.
I think I know we have character education in some format, and it has different initials associated with it in every one of our buildings. But more and more, I think professional educators are feeling that character education is not just, it is partly a program, but it's also partly just the climate that you set in each building becomes the role model and the expectations for behavior. I don't know if anybody wants to speak about what it looks like in each of your buildings, but I know it's more than the program that you have in your buildings, but you do have programs.
I mean, here at the middle school, we basically have these big pride days where we talk about these topics, so we embed it as part of their educational environment and what they're learning. But we learned that we're getting more bang from the buck on these quick hits. So it's the revisiting of the major theme for the month. It could be on the morning news or video, where we've looked at values.com as part of one of the programs that is out there that we use and we showcase to our students in 30-second to a minute clip. And then it's something that's dialogue back and forth with the teacher, so it's constantly being revisited. We're realizing that, you know, a 45-minute lesson once every couple of weeks, it doesn't stick. It doesn't develop a culture. But the more that you talk about it, the more that you bring to light that these things are revisited in all areas of the building, and that dialogue continues to happen on that topic or that theme for the month. We're seeing the students really buy in a lot more. So that's the transition that we've taken this year. So it's not one specific program. It's more us aligning, you know, what the students' really needs are to what we're talking about.
So those are not mutually exclusive events. You can have a focused character building program, and you can have everything else that you do, which is great in revisiting everything. The difficulty with having an everything approach is it is very difficult to evaluate from an outcome standpoint. It's very hard to know what of all those things you did really had any impact. So now you can take it to the other extreme and say, well, you know, doing this 45-minute thing every other week is also, you know, yeah, you're going to be able to prove your impact, but it's tiny. And so you're always weighing the specific with a more limited impact or outcome versus everything worked or everything didn't work. And so this is not the forum to have a lengthy discussion, but you know, I just you know, if we're, you know, going to be true to what I remember the committee talking about, then we're going to probably revisit character education as a component of everything that's done, and not. It sounds almost like it's being jettisoned, and I don't think that that's what, you know, had been talked about. So maybe I misunderstood what you said.
I mean, it hasn't been jettisoned as far as it's constantly being addressed and constantly being worked on. But it's being done in a lot of different areas. Like you said, there's not one specific program that we go to and say, this is our character education program, and it revolves around climate, PBIS, SPDG grants. I mean, all those things come together to form what happens with our students on a daily basis.
And I would say that those things also can obviously contribute along with the larger activities in climate development and furthering a positive climate, like a freshman transition program, freshman orientation, being focused on, you know, this isn't about the rules and regulations, this is about welcome to Old Saybrook High School. And then taking that kind of transition and having upperclassmen care for the freshmen coming in, and then translating that into mid-year something like a Cocoa and Cram or exam prep, where we're going to help lead you through your freshman year. So, you know, I agree with Matt. It's not as though it's being, you know, it's not under an umbrella of a program called character education, and I hear what you're saying, but there's a lot of it that does go on. These pieces can be evaluated in terms of how much of an, you know, asking kids or looking at academic performance to see how much of an impact it may be having. But I do think it's always going to be challenging to pinpoint exactly what is making those differences, especially as we do more and more.
That's true. Thank you.
And what the only thing that I can add, obviously, to what everybody knows and believes in about positive culture is that what we realized is that it was as much about developing a common philosophical approach from our teachers' point of view, that if all teachers aren't on the same page and they don't have the same belief system and they don't accept a commonality of what the expectations are for themselves as well as their students, then, you know, we're going to hit roadblocks every time, you know, we turn a corner. So we've spent the last 4 months really developing a common language, a common understanding, and a common expectation for each other as well as for our students. And we're following very closely Joanne Fraybrook's work, you know, from the State Department. We really find her the most closely aligned with, you know, what Goodwin is about, and so she's been a great resource for us. We started out by reading a book that we all, as administrators, had at our disposal, and we constantly refer to it to help us to stay grounded in what our expectations are and what our hopes are for our kids. So, you know, we're evolving in terms of hopefully it won't be too much of a hybrid, because we want to maintain the reflective classroom piece that we all spent a lot of time being trained for. But we sent 7 people to Joanne's training last summer, and they've been kind of our scouts as we develop a common understanding of what school culture is.
Thank you all. You may continue.
That is, I believe, our last slide, that really sort of outlines, George?
Just a quick comment to maybe sort of address, maybe follow up on Mara's point, and that is, I think that we've had a long discussion on school climate culture and so on, and perhaps, when you guys set the agenda, it'd be nice to actually have a topic, maybe it's going to do workshop thing, where we actually talk about that, where we just keep on that, because obviously, PBIS is 5 years old now, at least, right? And it's a grant type thing. Actually, I've gone to that website. It's actually very structured, right? And so 5-year study, actually, you can actually perhaps pinpoint differences what's going on. And clearly, at Goodwin and Freiburg with a different approach, and at the high school, perhaps with a different approach. And so even for me, having sat through here, trying to grasp all this, is not trivial. And I appreciate. Even tonight when we have these the updates from different schools. These things are sort of bits and pieces in there, and maybe if it's more of a cohesive presentation at different levels, that may address some concerns here, and that perhaps a off-the-shelf or program may not be it, because I think what's going on is there are already many pieces here tailor-made for particular schools.
And my recollection of that, because Mike Rafferty headed the character ed as the district, was that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that the committee did come together and they said developmentally and based on the programs that were in place and what was developmentally appropriate, they looked at kind of different aspects. And so it wasn't one program for the whole district. So, maybe just bringing that group together again. And
maybe just a review of PBIS of the past 5 years would be really good.
Eileen.
Very briefly, I know that my, obviously, passion is the personal success plan. And I know we're not there yet, and I know the state's not there yet, and the Superintendent's Association group has sent out certain pieces of information, but they're because they certainly would talk about the role of the teacher, but I'm always about what's the role of the student. It's their success plan. So it's kind of like we know about teachers being facilitators, we know about what teachers need to do, but it still hasn't been able yet, and I'm trying to do my research to help you as well, to find some things that might be of interest, to really get students to be the engaged ones, because they're the ones that need to be able to understand their strengths. And so that's a whole other conversation, maybe not for tonight, but I know we're not there, and so at another time, it'd be interesting to explore.
Seems to be, Eileen, we were just talking about this at district leadership today, there seems to be a shift, not to abandon student success planning, which would be upsetting to me, and I know it would be to you too, but to sort of fold it into student-centered learning, which there's been quite a bit of education in Old Saybrook before my time here and during about differentiating instruction, making learning student-centered. There is some talk at the state level, I'm not sure where it is in the process of pushing off the requirements of the student success planning to 2022 now, because
we don't have to together yet,
which is sort of like so far out. So we're going to proceed in Old Saybrook's version of it, and a lot of the elements are in place, and some of them we're still working on, as you pointed out more than once, and you're right, and we know that. And that's one of the things that we're going to work on. And a little bit later, we're going to talk about community conversation and something we want to try to do with that there.
So we're talking about the budget. Well, but I mean, it's not just a bunch of numbers.
No, it's not.
People and teachers and students and programs, and so there's always an interface. So, but we are talking about the budget, and so Joanne was ill, wasn't able to make it this evening, but if she were here, she would tell you that the Budget and Fiscal Planning Committee voted to approve or forward back to the full board the superintendent's recommended budget with the recommendation of the Board of Education. I believe the language something like review and approve. Obviously not, nothing compulsory on our part. The point is, there was no recommendation from the Budget and Fiscal Planning Committee to alter the superintendent's request. So it's back before the board for our deliberations. We have tonight and 2 February meetings at at most of the regular meetings, and we can call special meetings as long as we need to. Our goal, I mean, it's actually a requirement, is that we submit our budget to the Board of Finance by March 1st, according to the charter. So we've got 3 meetings, and this is the first one, and so it probably would be appropriate, seeing the committee sent it back to us for a full board review, with the recommendation that, you know, they've not made any changes, to just open up a general discussion at this point on the budget, and then see how far we get, and hope we approve it within the next 3 meetings or at some special meeting. So, again, people have had it for a little while, you've seen the presentation, the Board of Finance was here earlier, with very specific but somewhat limited questioning. I think they're, I mean, they left with a very good sense. I get a good sense from them. We'll see what happens as the process moves on, but I think they have a better understanding of our budget than they have in years past, which I think is very good. So, any questions or comments at this point from the Board of Education? If you need more time, we'll take it up on February 3rd again. So there's no.
I just want to mention that I thought procedurally it went well, you know, for Jan as the superintendent to sort of give the overview, but then of course, you know, Julie has all the details, and the Board of Finance knows Julie really well, and she's very much able to let them know the kind of study that we're doing, and I think they get a sense that we're inclusive in looking at staffing, and we're looking at all the things that need to happen. And so I think that they felt like they could ask their questions and they could get information that in a sense things pretty open.
I want to say great work on both of your parts, and in particular, you know, I've worked with a couple of superintendents on the board, and your knowledge of the budget is really quite good by comparison to some of the others, as Julie can probably attest. You two make a very good team in those presentations. So, you're very welcome. So, board members, any issues? And again, if you say, listen, we need more time to reflect, read the budget, we could take it up on February 3rd or 24th or 5th, whatever the next one is.
Yeah.
24th.
You can email us questions or any additional information.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and I should know these numbers, right? So, don't actually look it up. It's just a general question. So, I mean, when you, just going back a little bit, when you presented your current 14-15 current situation, right, the sheet, and so, I always forget, the ones that always stand out are the special ed transportation, right, because there's going to be reimbursement for the state, and so those 180% will go down to 100%. But the ones, but there's a lot of ones where, like textbook or something, where you don't anticipate we will spend that much.
Right.
Okay, so my question is, when you project for the following year, do you use the number, do you use the original number, or do you use the expected amount to be spent?
In the quarterly projection you're talking about?
No, when you project for next year.
So when we build a new
Oh,
budget,
we project for next year.
and you use actuals from the year before, or do
As
you
Jan
use
said,
the
it's built from the ground up.
built from the ground up?
So
But so it's you can be using actuals.
Absolutely.
Okay.
If we use this year's budget, whether we say expended year to date, or this is what I budgeted this year and I'm gonna budget that much next year, it tends to be that tends to lead to most line items going up. If you start from zero, you have to look at the year-to-date expenditures of the current year, and you have to examine what your trending has been if you've been in that position for a while. But if you start from zero, then I think you are more inclined, I know that you're more inclined to present a really accurate budget, because it has in it all of those things that have been requested by the teachers with the administrators' input, and it moves forward with that very careful thinking already having been done at the building level.
Other comments or questions from the board on the budget? Shall we just let you have it for another couple of weeks and come back on February 3rd and see what else there is?
Just very briefly, Jan had mentioned when they said, what is it that you would like? You had mentioned, do you want to just clarify quickly, or we can wait for another time about it from that?
Yeah. Yep, and I may ask Mr. Sutton to help, but he had brought early on in the budget process the idea of having, in particular, a math, what's the title, the working title that you gave?
District coordinator.
Coordinator. And this would be someone K-12 with the significant shift in curriculum in math. Our math teachers are working with their building administrators, with their fellow teachers, with Mr. Sutman to really bring that along K through 12. In particular, we're concerned with the significant change as it impacts those students in the middle years right now. It would be a wonderful opportunity for us to have someone who could coordinate all of those efforts. And at the same time, this person would be coordinating our use on technology, digital tools for learning, at each level, maximizing our use of those, which would include maybe some coaching and instruction for fellow teachers on how to use those, maybe in the area of math, maybe outside of the area of math. Mr. Sutman, you want to add to that at all?
Having someone with the expertise that could come into classrooms and model the new techniques of instruction in mathematics would be tremendous. And we really don't have anyone in district that can do that. Our current model is we have one leader per building who specialize basically in their area. But to have someone that would have the expertise, not only to model that, but to coordinate all of that from K to 12 would be a big benefit to our math instruction. As you know, through the years of CMT presentations, our math has always lagged behind our English language arts in scores. And I think we're going to see the same thing on the SBAC. Language arts teachers also have the ability to collaborate with a grade level teacher. In 6th grade, for example, there are 2 LA teachers, and students have double the minutes of LA that they have math. So to put extra resources into mathematics when we don't necessarily have the minutes, but if we could build in more expertise, I think it would be a great benefit to our students in mathematics.
I agree. Let me go Holly, then Kelly, then Eileen.
I was just going to add to that because I've been the math liaison, and even though I haven't got too many meetings this year, they've been asking for this for years. So I know that this is something that's really important for the math teachers and department heads. So I hope we get that.
So what would, my first question is, what would be the budget impact, right? So if we add on this position, what does that look like in terms of numbers?
Yeah, I think that we would be prudent to not put in a first-year teacher budget amount. So I think we'd be probably using Masters 5 or maybe 6th year 5, meaning 5 years of experience, step 5 rather. So we would use with benefits the number about $75,000. Let's say 75 to 90,000, and if the board would like us to explore it, we can nail those numbers down to much more precise.
Right, in terms of salary, and then there'd be some additional benefit.
That's both, actually, with
It's
both
incorporated
number.
in?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's why when I finished my statement, I think I moved closer to 90 with the full
90.
benefit, assuming full benefits.
Okay. And then my second question is, how would that role work with the numeracy person? So like Heidi's role,
At
for
Goodwin,
example.
yeah. Mr. Sutman, you've talked to them directly.
Yep, so the 3 building specialist positions would no longer be filled.
Okay.
The monies that are used to pay for those 3 positions would no longer be used to that same capacity. But we would still have to have a building level coordinator that would communicate within the math teachers within that building.
Okay.
So we had that position long ago. Julie, we'd have to resurrect what we paid that position. But we did have building coordinators at one time.
Okay.
So there's the potential, Julie or Jan, for somewhat of an offset?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, my experience is very limited, but I have a middle schooler in my immediate family and another one in my, actually 2 more in my extended family. And math is the real bugaboo these days with the moving over to the new approach and Common Core and this and that, which, and there have been fits and starts with the state in terms of, what are we going to be looking at and how are we going to be doing it. And it's difficult when you look at the, math homework and you have no idea what it means anymore for parents. I hate to admit that in public. But the point is, this is a real challenge. It's a real challenge. And so, I'd be very open as a member of this Board of Education to revisit this, to get some really hard numbers on what it means, to look for any offsets or savings that could, be fiscally prudent in terms of how we approach it. But I think math is really the big issue for us as we roll forward with some of the new approaches to the curriculum. So, just my 2 cents, Vito, and then Eileen.
Where does this person fit in the table of organization? Is it
Teacher.
as a teacher?
It's a
Okay.
teacher, yeah.
Not
Yeah,
just
and really, it
Not
would,
administrative.
it would be someone who, as Mr. Sutton said, would do coaching, would do modeling, would also do some work with students, not his or her assigned class, but would be working directly with students to model. And maybe do some direct instruction and professional development to his or her peers. And that's a model that I think is long overdue in education. We do it, but not enough of it. We have always seen that as a luxury. It's not a luxury. If someone has expertise, they should have the opportunity to build that expertise and share it within our own walls, instead of, necessarily always relying on consultants. This is a known person, trusted person who becomes part of the team and walks into a classroom and models, and it becomes an opportunity for both adults in the room, or more than two adults in the room, to learn from each other.
Heston.
Jan just touched on it. We spend about $9,000, $18,000 total for a consultant, one for English language arts and one for mathematics. So offsetting some of that cost may be not hiring that mathematics consultant. And then we have someone in-house who we can schedule, that can be flexible to our schedule. And Mandy, God love her, has taken on the role of being the math building specialist this year at the middle school, because we weren't able to fill that position. No math teacher was interested in doing that this year. And she can attest to how difficult it is to have a consultant be available when we need them to be available, and also to have that ongoing dialogue that's so important to help teachers grow.
There's so much talk now about just-in-time professional development rather than all our PD is in September, November, and March. We would be able to say, this person could come to a faculty meeting, this person could be here for half a day, this person could come because your math teachers at the high school all have this period that they can meet. And you'd be able to do it now, so you could be working on it in the classroom next week.
Eileen, and then Kelly.
Because I similar to Holly, remember we had a curriculum committee years ago, and I think that there was a literacy person in the district. Is that accurate, or is it was just as Goodwin? But that the lack was the numeracy, that piece that we're talking about right now. Is there a literacy person that we have that can address reading and writing with teachers in a similar vein?
In the middle school, we have 2 literacy interventionists
Okay.
that do some professional development. We have 1 math interventionist at the middle school. At Goodwin School, Sheila, 3 teachers that are
We have
involved
one interventionist and we
numeracy.
have Heidi.
Right. So we have 1 at Goodwin in numeracy, but yet at Goodwin we have 3 in literacy.
I could also do coaching.
No, we have 3 in literacy, we have 2. Lauren and Dara,
But Judy does some as well, right?
I guess. I'm not
That's okay.
sure.
I'm just saying
She points
that
out.
are also, in that
Yeah.
capacity, that could be doing that, so you have it in.
Well, so it sounds like we've got resources allocated in the literacy area. We seem to
Yes.
be doing better on the standardized tests in the literacy area. And I think there have been more machinations on the math side in general. And I do want to say for the record, the math teacher that my daughter has and my nephew has right now is absolutely outstanding. So it has nothing to do with the quality of the teacher, the qualification of the teacher, so that there's no misunderstanding. It's all the changes in math and how math's going to be delivered and how math's going to be measured on the various tests and like that, that's really throwing everybody into kind of a tailspin.
It's coming from these teachers that want more. They
Right.
want more consistency.
I
They want
think-
modeling, they want
Right.
instruction on it.
There are advanced degrees in the teaching of reading and literacy. I don't know of, other than another math degree, I don't know of one that's like that. There is, you can become a reading teacher, you can become a reading consultant. It is, we've all maybe paid it some short shrift in our desire to really emphasize literacy needs, because let's face it, literacy is the key to all learning. You have to be able to read and process language in order to be able to learn. But we need to be paying attention to our math scores and what our math teachers are saying they believe our students need. They seem to be indicating the same thing.
So why don't we do this? Why don't we ask Jan to come back with numbers, as much as she can pull together in terms of what costs would be and where offsets might be, and see what the budget impact might be. And then we can take that up on February 3rd with a little bit more information. Maybe you could put together a rough memo or something beforehand to post on the board wiki, And then we could just have it in, part of our discussion on February 3rd. We've got a little bit of time before we have to finalize the budget. Kelly?
So just as a consideration in the overall numbers, and this would be nominal in comparison to the rest of the budget, but if we're gonna have somebody that's an instructional model for others, just what the cost of PD specifically for that person. So how is that person going to remain current?
Yeah.
Right, over the course of time is something else that we should probably consider, because they might need some type of differentiated development that then we're gonna use to do almost like a train the trainer to train the teacher.
It's an excellent point, because I would imagine this person would be delivering professional development on many of our PD days, and so we would need to find time for this person to engage in conferences and meet people like him or herself in other districts.
Well, I didn't think we were going to vote tonight anyway.
Right.
Anybody could have motioned it, of course, but I didn't think this was ripe for a vote. Sounds like we've got something on the table to take up, so can we just call it a day on this right now? We'll take it up again on February 3rd. All right, excellent, thank you very much. Microsoft 365 discussion, Jan and Heston.
This has been alluded to all night long, and finally, Heston has a presentation ready for us. We talked in the combined Board of Finance and Education meeting about opportunities that we are seeking for our staff and students. The goal is to make teaching and learning easier, to replicate their experiences both at college and in our students at college and beyond. And we have done some careful studying. And we're ready to propose, we're sending this before you tonight as information regarding the direction our IT department is beginning to move in.
Julie is very knowledgeable with leading this topic along with myself and the district leadership team in the tech department. So Julie, please jump in and help me along here. So we're going to try to give our students and staff the experience of what it is like to work in the business world with technology. And Microsoft 365 does offer many components that mimics what they may experience. So what is it? It's made up of many components, and I will do the best that I can to describe all of these components. So starting on the left top is Outlook. So Microsoft 365 offers us email through Outlook, which many of you may be familiar with already. It also is a calendaring program, and it also houses all your contacts, all your email contacts, all your phone contacts, etc. Those first three tiles are really embedded in one program in Outlook. Currently, we have stamp mail, we have iCal, and our contacts all operate separately. Microsoft 365 brings them all together. The news feed piece is that you can put in a query of topics that you're interested in. So say you're going to be scuba diving in Honduras, you can put in that information, and automatically anything that's in the news will be sent to you directly. And you'll get all the articles about Honduras and diving and what's happening there, and it's automatically fed to you rather than you having to go out and find it. OneDrive is simply having a remote server off-site that is encrypted, and I'll get a little bit more into that. But basically, if you save your files there, you can access them anywhere you have an internet connection. So if you're in Honduras and they do have an internet connection, then you can access your files. Right now, this is a big headache for our teachers. They email files back and forth. They go on flash drives. They have to worry about, do I have Microsoft 2002 at home? And at school, I have 2011. And are they compatible? It's a bit of a mess. So this will solve that problem. It also has team sites, which acts very much like a website or like wiki pages. So a teacher that teaches 5 sections could have 5 separate websites and post materials on those websites, can post videos. They could blog and chat back and forth with students who are assigned to those websites. A teacher may have something fantastic going on and could give the Board of Ed access to their website for a week. And it could be view access, it could be read or write access. And then after a week, the board got a chance to look at that, then they could turn that off. So it's very controlled, and the teacher would have control over those sites. What's also exciting about that is I could create a site for 2 of my students. And these two students are going to collaborate on that site. And once that unit is over or that project is over, I could take that site down. So again, a lot of control that teachers and students would have the ability to bring them up and take them down. Task is like an electronic checklist of all the things that you need to get done within the day or the week or the year or what have you. Delve is interesting. If I had something in tasks about Honduras that I had to get done, and I had created some sites for students about Honduras, and then on OneDrive I had files about Honduras, and then I had newsfeed on Honduras, and then I had people who were contacts there, I had things in my calendar, and I had things that are email. They seem to be all over the place. You go into Delve and you type in Honduras, it's going to put all of those resources on one page. So then everything I've ever dealt with or communicated or researched about Honduras will now be listed in Delve. So it brings everything together for you, which right now, I don't know if you're like me, but where did I save that? Was that an email? Did I put that on a wiki page? Was that something I got from Jan? Delve pulls it all together, which is pretty powerful. Video is a place that's like OneDrive. It's offsite. It's a remote server that you can save all your video content. And then, of course, you have the Microsoft Suite, which is Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and then something additional, which is a nice feature, is called OneNote, and it's an online notebook that you can create like chapters, you can have subsections, you can have like tabs. So a student goes to class for biology, they can have a biology area where they can take all their notes. Next class they go to accounting, they go to the accounting part of their notebook. They can embed links there, they can embed photos, they can grab text and put it into the notebook. It's pretty powerful. And again, any of this is available to you anywhere in the world that you have internet access, which is much different than what we offer our students and staff right now. So it uses an industry benefit off Microsoft Office. It integrates email, calendaring, and contacts, which I alluded to. Available anywhere you have an internet connection. It's their site. Microsoft is up 99.9% of the time, which far outweighs, well, I don't know far, but it outweighs how often our district is up with the different issues that we have. So it's more reliable. It's very secure. Encryption protocols means that when you send a document or an email to someone, it doesn't go through as is. It's encrypted by a code, and then when it gets to the other end, it's, is this a word, unencrypted? So if someone intercepts that, they don't have the ability to read any of your information, which is more secure than what we currently have now on our servers. And then OneDrive files are available, anytime, anywhere. Other benefits, it's a great collaboration tool, and we know that students going to college, many of them get all their resources online, and they have to collaborate with their classmates online, so this is going to give our students that experience. You can share all kinds of materials, and you can have real-time collaboration. So Mario and I could be on the same document, typing at the same time, and seeing what each other is doing. It integrates with desktop version. This is a little hard to explain, but this will be my first shot at it. So when teachers come to school and they log into their Microsoft account, they're going to see it as a specific version. When they go home, teachers will have the opportunity to download that same exact version. So when they go home and they log in, it will look exactly as their school site. Then they have a third option. So if they're not at home and perhaps they are traveling and they want to get something and they want to use their cell phone, there is yet a third version that gives you access to all those tiles, all those components, but it's slimmed down. It doesn't have all the bells and whistles, but you can still get to your content.
So it's like a desktop version that is what Heston first described. And then there is we'll call it an internet version or a slimmed down version. So it looks slightly different. Just like when you go home and you look at your email on your Yahoo or your Gmail account, it looks one way. It's the same type of situation.
It's web-based.
It's web-based, exactly.
Let's see. It reduces cost and operational support. So the folks that work in IT are constantly monitoring our servers. When they go down, they have to be rebuilt, they have to be recovered. It's a lot of time, it's a lot of effort. When there are new versions coming down of any type of software, they have to put the new version up and make sure everything's compatible around the district. That will all be handled by Microsoft. So a lot of the work that we put in now would be off of our plates. A free 1 terabyte. So it was described to me that if you took your documents and you stacked them on top of each other, it'd be as tall as the Eiffel Tower. That's what 1 terabyte would look like. It is massive. It's a huge amount of information. No one in the district even comes close to that right now. And then 50 gigabytes of email storage, again, is a massive amount of storage. We can't come near to offering that amount of storage. Richard Porter basically said to me that you can go your entire career and never erase an email, and you'd have enough capacity to do that. Same with all of your documents. It's compliant to HIPAA, which is medical privacy, FERPA, which is educational records privacy, ISO certified, so ISO certifies all kinds of procedures in the business industry, so it's ISO certified. COPA is, and SIPA is both online protection for students, so it meets all of those standards. We have looked at other vendors, like a vendor that starts with a G, and they don't promise any of this. They may promise some of it in a version, and the other piece is that our data that goes to Microsoft is owned by us. They're not using it for anything. They're not trying to sell you anything. It is our data, and they're not taking and doing anything with it. They're just storing it for us, which is a big difference than another company.
If I could, Heston, this was the holdup. We realized that, and we've talked with other districts, and many are going this way. Hartford right now is they're going strictly Microsoft 365. And I think they're doing all off-site storage is what Mike Gardner said to us. So we have other districts doing this. Other districts are way ahead of us, but that's all right. I wasn't interested in being the early adapter on this one. I wanted to see how it looked in other places. And that other company and probably some others, it was very clear to us that the level of security we're looking for our students and our data and our records just wasn't there. And as a matter of fact, they very clearly tell you up front, they don't lie about it, that they will be going through things and pulling out phrases and sending advertisements and which they don't do to students now, I understand, but they do go through your data to make sure that they are directing you in a way that will sell. And that just didn't sit right with the team, and we thought that when this option was presented to us, we thought this was a much more attractive option.
And I talked about these 2 points already. So you're using this Microsoft Suite, and the district owns the data. So this is what we've done so far. We've created an account, so we have a district Microsoft account. We have upwards now, more folks are asking for early adopter accounts, so we have at least 48 staff members and students that are early adopters that are trying this out and starting to give us some feedback. Email accounts have been created for the early adopters and for students specifically. You should know that their ability to email is only within our district directory. So they can't email outside the district, only to students and staff who are part of our district directory. Now we may change that at some point. We may look at juniors and seniors and say, listen, they're involved in work experiences outside of school and they need to make contacts. And again, this mimics what they'll be doing in their in the real world. But right now, it's just within district. We haven't decided what grade level we'll start that at. That's a discussion right now. But it's something that we will decide. This Friday coming up, we will have presentations to all 3 faculties about Microsoft 365. DLT and some early adopters have received introductory training, really just an overview of what it is and how it works. And we're also going to have the ability to run a parallel system. So we have our stamp mail currently right now that teachers are really familiar with, have all their contacts, works really well for them right now. We're also going to have our Microsoft Outlook account running at the same time. So they'll have both for a while, but then we'll set a date that stamp mail is going to go away and they're going to be forced to use only Microsoft Outlook. So what needs to be done? We need more feedback from our early adopters. They're going to help us design professional development. We have to determine our strategy for storage. We can still store some documents local that we say we don't want these to go out. We want these here. We want to have full control, and some will be on a remote server. Keep in mind, if it's on a remote server, we have full control. We can do searches, we can archive, we can download. We have all the controls to access that remote data. We have to determine student use by grade level, what tools certain grade levels have, and how they be introduced to those. We have to determine the methods and protocols for transitioning current files. There's going to have to be some professional development where teachers actually sit down and take files from here and move them here, as well as with our email calendars and wiki sites. These are all down the line a bit. We've determined all the timelines and deadlines for the conversion, and then determine our professional development focus and the timing for all of the PD. We realized that throwing this all at our teachers at once would not go well. So we're first going to introduce the Outlook. We're going to make sure that everyone has their contacts, their current contacts. So if I'm a 5th grade teacher and I email all 5th grade parents, we want that to be accessible for them when we transition them. So have all their contacts, want to make sure they're able to email, and we want to make sure that there was something else. Contacts, email. Oh, and then they can also send attachments. So we want to make sure they're proficient in those 3 things. Once we're proficient in that, we'll start looking at another piece of the puzzle, maybe the calendar piece. But we're going to phase this in over time.
A couple of quick things. We have a lot of Apple equipment around here. Is it all compatible? Because, historically, Microsoft's been mostly a PC.
Amazingly so, Mario. To my surprise, it really is.
Okay.
Yes.
I know there have been a lot of advances in that area. I'm a PC, so I don't really know much about how the Apple stuff works. A big thing to deal with here is really beyond just the technical stuff, and that is, developing or tweaking policies on communications and digital, whatever, is in
BYOD.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff. So
yes.
it's going to be some stuff that's at the board level, but frankly, I don't think that much. I think our stuff is overlays. I think it's more at your level regulations and it's policies and procedures for staff that we probably don't even need to see. But just that's where, having migrated a few things over to new systems and this and that in my other world, that's where you really have a hang up is, how do you make the old policies fit with the whole new regime of technologies and like that. So
If I could just say something about that. We looked at the BYOD policy today at DLT. It seems to be very comprehensive and have considered all of this. So between the BYOD and our technology use policies for both employees and students, we think we're in really good shape. The new ones that the board just adopted in 2013 leaves us in very good shape as we roll this out.
But like a regulation, at what grade level will we say you can't turn in a paper anymore? It has to be emailed or put in a Dropbox. Those types of transitions are going to take a lot of time to hash out and take a while for us to get there. But regulations like that have to be defined.
And cyber citizenship.
Yes.
Do you get any of that TA or samples or templates from Microsoft on that? Like what other districts have done, or do they provide templates of policies to address those kinds of things, or are we, on our own?
I haven't seen anything that other districts have done. I know there are multiple districts around the state that have gone to Microsoft 365, but the sites piece, setting up the network of the sites and how all of those sites are going to interact with each other and all the permissions, and how students will turn in work and drop them, and the communication between the teacher and the student on those sites, and do we give parents access to specific sites and not others? There's so much of that that has to be worked out. That's a big nut to
Maybe a
crack.
couple of site visits to successful districts a couple of years ahead of us. Other board members, questions? George?
I wasn't clear. Are you actually going to give student access to 365?
Yes.
Word, Excel.
So that will be their LMS.
Right.
That'll be the learning management system that we use, so they'll have access to all of that.
Yes.
Our computers will be imaged to all look identical, just like a university has.
What's interesting is Microsoft allows teachers to download one duplicate version for home, but it allows students to do it 5 times.
I understand. But-
5 different devices.
So they could put it on an iPad, they could put it on a home computer, they could put it on
Their
their phone.
So,
Like forever.
no. So, I mean, I'm actually quite familiar with 365. So, there's an annual fee.
Right.
And when you drop, you have about a month. And so if you guys go down this road, you guys are committed quite a while because you,
Yes.
cause going, to set this up is a huge hurdle, but once you're done, and, most universities will give the students access to 365 for free the entire time they're students, which is fantastic. For home, it's $20 a year, that kind of stuff, so it's relatively still cheap because you actually, you have to keep borrowing micro. But the couple of things you want to realize is, they will continue to move up on their Word templates, and pretty soon it won't be not be back compatible. And so when you quit, you better, your Word better be 2010 or higher, because if it's something before that, you won't be able to open that document anymore with your. So these kind of sort of things that people want to be realize.
Right.
We also know, I mean, of course, I asked the question, what's in it for Microsoft? Because this is very nice, but I'm sure that, we know that there's a set price now that we think is very reasonable. We are very pleased with this option because we didn't think that we were going to find an option that was going to work for all Saybrook Public Schools, because we were weighing that concern between privacy and protection and replicating the experiences that they'll have. But we do know that the price can go up, that the commitment is a long-term one. We are thinking that coming in at this point, we have, I hope, 10 years or more ahead of us where we'll be able to utilize this.
And I don't believe it works on Chromebook. So, I mean, when you talk about devices, it is similar to the ones where it just doesn't work on Chromebook.
I didn't know that.
Chromebooks are very proprietary.
They are, exactly.
Oh, that's right, they're
Exactly. So the ones, so you.
But it works on a lot of devices that are other, like Chromebooks, but other than.
It almost has to be a computer. It cannot be it cannot be a built-in OS that you cannot download anything.
There are tablets that will work on.
Sure, absolutely, but a tablet is, right, I mean, and a Chromebook is basically a locked-in.
Yeah, the Chromebook is very proprietary,
Absolutely.
yeah, it works only.
But a lot of schools will do that because the advantage of doing that is you locked it and there's nothing you can do about it. So the flip side of when you guys are talking about devices, this is fantastic, but it does have some limitation because you actually need to have a computer after.
Any questions? Yes, Kelly.
So for the site functionality of it, is it SharePoint based?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
So there's some considerations there too, because there's different levels of ownership to that piece, right? Like you have to have administrators for each page that can grant access. There's a lot of training that goes into that. The second piece is the idea that the SharePoint sites would then obsolete the wikis.
Yeah, we're hoping that the skills that teachers have learned from administrating their own wiki pages will be transferable to these team sites.
They should be to some extent. I mean, we
To
use
some extent,
SharePoint
yeah.
at work all the time, and now that I've kind
Right.
of indoctrinated
The-
into the
the-
wikis through here, but
The hard thing is going to be for teachers who have really built their wikis to be comprehensive, to transition them away from that. And I don't know how to move, we haven't researched yet how to move all their content from a wiki site to a SharePoint site. And we're thinking that's going to be quite a task.
yeah, because there are some like Explorer options where you can open up and drag in a ton of files at the same time.
Right.
So okay.
So we think that's going to be pretty difficult.
But I mean, it's good. There's a lot, to your point, there's a lot of corporations that are using these technologies. A lot of companies use SharePoint.
And we have to keep in mind that the servers that we now own are Apple servers, and Apple no longer supports servers. So they don't have any more updates. The software is not updated. There are no more patches coming through. So we have to get away from them.
And I'd like to also add to your question, Chairman Gabry, that we have purchased Macs up to this point, but I think that this would give us the freedom to purchase other items too. We wouldn't have to feel as compelled to stick with Macs across the board. You know, if we can get a better deal in a certain situation on a different type of computer, that might be the way to go, and this allows us to do that.
So that's what Dell, that's what Microsoft gets with their partners in the short term. In the long term, they actually get market share back from Apple that had the brilliant strategy of giving away Apple technology at the schools for years and years and years, basically, so that they own a big chunk of the current generation of new workers, and Microsoft has finally figured that out.
And I think it's important that we say this is our best decision.
Yeah, no,
This is the best decision for us now.
Absolutely.
And we know in 5 years, we might have to migrate to something else, but that's the technology world that we live in.
So you don't need us to do anything tonight?
No, we just wanted you to know about this. We'd like to come back and present to you again and bring some folks from IT in the future when we have a few more questions answered, a little bit more rollout. Many of us are playing with this right now. As a matter of fact, the budget PowerPoint was created by Trent, Julie, and me using this technology. We're very proud of ourselves. And very nicely. And it went very well. And we are playing with it and finding many wonderful uses for it. And I almost wish I could get back into a classroom to use this with students because it has so much potential.
Any other questions? Right, then we'll move on and we'll wait for the next thing. Social media, firewall. Yak response?
This is a response. Unfortunately, Kevin's not here tonight. I know he's home studying, but he brought up an interesting point at the last board meeting, and we did some work on this as part of the work that we're doing with IT to come up with some answers for him that are not just answers for him, but we thought were important to talk about. And Mr. Sutton's going to talk a little bit about what we found out.
So I learned there's something called a geofence, where you can find out the latitude and longitude of a given site, say the high school, and then contact a company like Yik Yak and say, we do not want your software to operate within these coordinates.
Kevin had brought up, if you don't mind me saying that, he was concerned about something that happened in a nearby town recently, and students expressed concern about it, and that prompted us to see what we had in place, and we found out we already had some things in place, that one of these geofences. And then we found out that we had an opportunity to put more in place for different sites.
Right, so that geofence was up, but we also blocked other sites as well, now that we know that this geofence is an option. And also on our iBoss server, we're making sure that all of these sites are blocked as well. It's important that students understand that when they're at school, they have a responsibility of how they communicate, obviously at home as well. And anything that we can do to protect students from any type of negative comments or negative social messages, we're trying to do that. So I thought it was awesome that Kevin brought it up and we were able to react pretty quickly, and it was something that I wasn't aware of, but the folks in the back in IT were aware of it, and they were a little bit ahead of us. So those are some steps that we're taking, and we'll continue to monitor what those next generation sites are or apps are, and make sure that we are trying to restrict them as much as possible.
George?
So does the geofence does the geofence just block your Wi-Fi, or does it actually block?
Just the Wi-Fi, and then the online hardline plugin is blocked by our filter.
With their own smartphone, they'll go right through it.
So if they're 4TL GT or whatever, they
Oh yeah, if they want to dial up, of course, they can still do that.
It's not dial up anymore. I mean, in other words, it's
Well, if they're going through a phone
to their
connection,
own
I
phone.
should
Yeah,
say.
that's what I meant to say. Sorry,
Right.
it's their own phone. So we can't block, because my understanding, because we had a similar thing come up at the university, and actually what our students are doing is they're now cheating with all kinds of wireless technology. And the wireless technology only has like a 50-yard thing, but what they do is they Bluetooth it to their cell phone that's in their car in the parking lot, and so they can communicate with anybody around the world to get the answers to their questions and this and that. And so we investigated it, and the FCC does not allow you to block telephone lines and like that. You can block your own Wi-Fi, which is what we're doing, but that's
right.
What's difficult is if they're doing it on their own cellular package, then we won't be able to block it. You're not allowed to block FCC approved stuff. Not in an environment like this.
I think the data usage per family will go up extremely high, and we could block it, the parents, as parents.
Oh, yeah, we
You
should
could
maybe
block
send a
the
little
data.
advisory out to parents about what to look for on your cell phone bill.
A sharp increase in data.
Exactly.
Yeah. This gave us an opportunity to reach out to our colleagues at that other district that had this problem, learn from what they dealt with, and do our best. And we know it's not foolproof, but we've done our best to address it.
Just like quickly, not based on the content, but having student representatives is the very dream, that this board put in place for the evolution of having a student be able to speak to issues, and that's how they grow versus telling you what's happening at sports events.
So I feel so
that's
bad.
exciting to have that come to our table that we're learning from them.
Yeah, George and then Vito.
Do you have any sense of how many students in high school, from Williams High School, actually have smartphones on their own data?
Smartphones, this would totally be a blind guess, but I would say at least 80 to 85% of them, at least.
So this geofence is irrelevant for 80%?
Well, there's different data plans, there's different,
Sure,
parents
sure.
have ways of, I don't know how many parents are doing that currently here,
Yeah,
but
80%
they can
go right.
block data usage throughout the day and open it up in the evenings and things like that, but
So
if
every
everybody
vote
has full
helps,
access.
But it would be probably good to figure out what the workarounds are, and maybe put some kind of an advisory together for parents on what to look out for. Vito?
If everything goes well and numbers come back right and all the adopters come back with good information, when do you plan on rolling this out?
365?
Well, Friday's an introduction to the staff
Mhm.
of what it is and how it works. Once we go through that introduction, there's already been some murmurs that folks that weren't early adopters are emailing saying, can we have it? They're anxious. So we're thinking once we go through the presentations on Friday, folks are going to be thirsty for it. But once we go through that process, we will set a timeline of when we're going to roll that out, but we haven't done that yet.
Is this going to change the way we communicate?
Yes, we could, yep. We actually are looking at changing our webpage, our home address, I can't think of the name.
Domain.
Domain, thank you so much. Our domain to, from the K-12CTUS to a .org, simpler, more straightforward.
Old Saybrook Schools.
If the wikis are gone, then we will use a different method for communication and storing some of our data and information. So to answer your question a little bit more, we have some rollout going on this spring and will go on into the fall. But we have already heard from folks that we don't want to do the rollout at the start of an academic year. We want to give people lots of time to play with it. Many of us are playing with it offline. We're not storing a lot of our everyday work on it and just playing with components of it. If we're up to almost 50 now who are doing that, have volunteered to do it, and we get another 10 or 20, we've got a significant number of staff involved in it already, which might push that date up, but we have some signposts, some benchmarks in March and April of rolling out pieces of this, and we're going to piece it out.
We have to
Right
make
now-
sure that we have a good protocol for moving all the teachers' contacts, making sure calendaring works, before we want to go with it and say, this is where we're going. So we have some work to do yet before we can set a date.
And we're also looking at the boots on the ground, the hands-on, the people that can help make the conversion so that we don't put an additional burden on staff when they're trying to, do what's most important, and that's what's going on in the classroom. So we're working on a plan to roll out very systematically, phase by phase, and hold hands as we need to. With any conversion, anybody that's been through any kind of conversion knows that, it wears on those involved.
George?
What is the cost? I'm just curious. For academics, what is the cost? 365.
Oh, for this, it's about, for the entire district, somewhere around $15,000, which isn't a whole lot more than we were paying Apple for all of the different pieces and parts. Actually, it's maybe even a little less at this point. So yeah, it's not bad at all.
Any other questions? Are we ready to move on? Connecticut School Health Survey, and there's a motion requested on this one.
And Kathy Bai is going to tell you about this. We received right around the holidays, we received a letter from the state of Connecticut saying that our middle school had been selected to give a questionnaire to students in grades 6 through 8. And I'll let Kathy tell you about the content of that survey. And I do have paper copies here if you want to take a look at it.
So this is part of a larger survey that the Connecticut State Department of Ed and the Department of Health has been involved in since 2005. And the whole purpose of the survey is to collect data on behaviors, and then what education do we then have to, what kind of educational program should we be giving our students. So some of those mandated PDs that we have to do are as a result of these surveys. So what they do is they ask select districts, either middle schools or high schools, to participate in the survey. They've asked our middle school to participate in this one, which would be grades 6 through 8. But it's not a school-wide survey, it's only select classrooms. So they said the most would be six classrooms total. And it would only be on tobacco usage. There's one for the high school that gets into all the other risky behaviors that we've been talking about previously. But this one that we're being asked to do is just on tobacco. And we did put a copy of the actual survey on the wiki, so we've read each one of the questions. Mandy and Matt have read them. So they're asking us to participate in it. There is either an opt-in or opt-out option. They said to date only one district has asked for the opt-in. They said you get a much poorer response rate because you're trying to get all those permissions from everyone. But they do have one district, and it was a large urban district too, so it is a lot harder than to get the surveys back. But they do have both options, and they're asking us to participate in.
What's the other dates?
Recommendations, do you want to make any? Sure.
So this is on the wiki.
Actually, I have one.
This is a paper copy that has all the questions.
Karen, you had a question?
I just wanted to see the survey. I don't know when it was put on the wiki, but I didn't see it. I think it was done.
We just put it on today.
So I was more concerned.
Yeah, I did go through it. There's a few questions that I'm uncomfortable with as far as asking kids what a doctor or nurse has told them without a parent available. I mean, that's stuff that should
Peter,
be.
can you speak louder? I didn't hear you.
If you read the survey,
Right?
there are some questions in there somewhere in the number 40 range that they ask questions of kids, and whether they're 9 years old or whatever, but they ask questions whether, has a nurse ever told you or a doctor ever told you to stop smoking or stuff like that. And I think any conversation between a child and a healthcare professional should be privileged information. And it's, I don't think it should be on there.
So are these, are the surveys anonymous and confidential?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And we're being asked about whether
We would
we're going to do
participate.
an opt-in or an opt-out?
We're asking if we would participate. And so I called to say, do you have opt-in and opt-out? And they said, yes, they have either option. We could do.
I mean, so I don't know how much, do we have any flexibility to alter the survey, or is it an all or nothing?
Probably not.
Probably not. So one of the
It's not
things would be
mandated either.
that your comment might influence our decision in terms of opt-in or opt-out.
Well,
Because if a parent is affirmatively opting in, then, that's different than,
My question is that because we've had a little history with some of the questions not being available, Health and Community Health and Youth, here the timeline is that survey would be administered between February and May. So February is pretty soon coming up.
Right.
So is that something that the questions are available to parents? If we agree that we're going to be, distributing this so that they can choose to opt out?
My recommendation in this case, because it's coming so close on the heels of a recent experience that left some parents feeling that they had not been given an option, I want to be sensitive to them. And I think that given that recent history, I think it's important that we give parents the option to opt in and treat it like a field trip form that would go home and say, do you want your child to go on this field trip? If so, please sign here. That puts a little additional work on our middle school administrators who will end up chasing people for signatures because a lot of people wanted their child to take it but forget to do the form. So there'll be that additional legwork, and we have talked about it, and they're willing to do that work in order to support this. But I think it's important based on where we are right now. That's not to say that we will always make that decision for every survey. That would be up to this group to consider and for us to advise you on. But I think in this case, I think it's wise.
Like with the survey along with that letter.
Yes,
the
the questions
say
would be available.
Questions available.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine.
We didn't. That was well, the last survey. I don't think that was encouraged. I don't think there was that issue with the survey.
No, they were very open to
Right.
either option.
Other questions or comments? Yes, Kelly.
Just so I just understood, because I don't know. Okay, so when you're sending out the letter to opt in, you're also sending a copy of the survey as well? Is that what you just said? or
No.
If they want to look at it.
The surveys will be available. Will be made available upon request in the main office, that kind of thing. And it will be a permission slip.
Could it be online?
Is there?
No, we'll have to ask. No, Kathy, no.
Well, I'm afraid that you probably wouldn't want a survey out there.
Get it out and kids
But if parents
Yeah.
wanted to come in and read the questions, they could, but not to have the actual
Right.
survey there where they could go over with their kids.
Yeah,
I
we
think it
still
should be
have
after
to
it's
provide
taken.
them with meaningful, valuable information, and we don't want it to become, so skewed that they can't use it. Kathy, one question I have, and I think, Sabina had too, was, do we get any results from this? Will we be able to apply any of it?
Because it's only 6 classrooms, they don't give you specific school, because it's,
Data.
it might, right.
So you'd get a state report.
Right. So, and they do things like fact sheets on how their efforts have decreased some of the poorer behaviors or increased breakfast daily, increased sleeping 8 hours a day, all the things that they look at. So.
It doesn't personalize it for you.
No, but I
and
think cooperating with this sort of state initiative is a good idea if we can.
Any motion for that?
Well, we have some more questions. Holly?
I guess I appreciate you being sensitive to everybody. I guess I just want to make sure this isn't going to be precedent setting. I think this is going to be really difficult to try to get people to be part of this. So I just want to make sure this isn't going to be precedent.
I'm not sure what you mean.
As far as opting,
whether
the
it's,
opt-in, because now you're asking parents if you can take it versus just putting it out there and then telling them.
Right. George?
I want to hit on this point again, but I would make reference to the community conversation piece that will come up next, and then maybe also Heston's comment about over assessment, and I think both those are related to here. I mean, I think the questions you have in your community conversation, I think, are so key, right? I mean, you said what you want to do is, what circumstances do we initial surveys to students and why, how has information been used, and what are procedures moving forward. I mean, I think which I'll be very interested in those answers actually, right, the discussion, and so it'd be nice to actually have that at this level as well. And I think we all know about surveys. We're all very interested in knowing what our students and parents, what their opinions are, but it's impossible to survey everybody. And so what we do is we take a sampling, we hope that the sampling is representative and not biased, but if it becomes biased, that's unfortunate. But what's even more unfortunate that we actually act on skewed biased survey, right? Then it's just wrong. And so I think, and you point this out, and this is obviously very true, right? So I think just even stepping back and just get a general assessment. Are we over, in the similar vein, are we over assessing, are we overly surveying? And given that, what do we do with these surveys and how information being used and so on? I think you pointed all these out to me when we have a more general conversation. I think I was addressing Holly's point as well. I mean, which way that we do want to be sensitive, but we don't want to make it so to the point that it becomes useless as well. Like, useless is actually okay. It's not okay, but detrimental is even worse.
Mm-hmm. So if you were to employ data that is so skewed that it really is meaningless, but you use it to make decisions, then
Precisely, that's actually
right.
that's detrimental.
Yeah, the community conversation piece is really a conversation. We don't intend on that evening to say, so going forward, we're gonna do, it's gonna be more of a, here's where we are, here's some of the dilemma that we're dealing with, and bring up these issues that you're discussing tonight. You know, when would it be useless for us to participate because the data is meaningless because we only got 10 people to respond, or the 10 people who responded are all gonna be from a particular class or a particular type, but, my thought is more that I just would not want to do anything to have people think that we're not credible and that we don't think the best interest of all the children of Old Saybrook Public Schools. And I think that I kind of felt like I was in that position at a recent board meeting, and I wouldn't want parents to feel that way. They need to trust us, and we need to do everything we can to have them trust us when they send their children here every day.
Kelly.
So I think that there's a couple things. So for me, the conversation was not only about the active versus passive consent, it was also about how we communicated it out, the number of times we communicated out about the survey in regards to the previous issue, right? The second piece is if this is only a small cohort that we're planning for this specific survey, and then we add in the active consent piece where we're going to be doing a lot of administrative chasing, that's automatically going to narrow the population, right, of how many students participate. Then we're taking away certain instructional time for a small sample of students. I mean, just the value of that. I understand participating and giving data to the state, and I think that that's valuable as well. Like, we need to track what our student population is doing. I'm wondering if, because this is a smaller group of students, if it's the time to test out that active consent or not. Not to say that it's a bad thing to move towards an active consent. I'm just worried about the amount of time that we're going to spend on this with active consent for the return that we're going to get on it. Because if at the end of the day, I mean, how many students would be subject to taking this originally, right? How many is the potential cohort of it? Do we know?
120.
So if it was 6, it'd be about 120.
Right, so then even if you narrow that down by 10% coming out, right, for...
You say in a typical survey, if you get 20% response with no chasing at all, you're doing well. Honestly, in a school district like Old Saybrook, I think you're going to get a fairly high return rate. I would be thinking we'd be around 50 or 60 or perhaps even more, and that's very much a guess, but based on my experience with having done surveys in the past. Especially because the nature of the questions here, once they're made available, I don't think will be anywhere near as controversial.
I don't think it's going to be as contentious with this either,
Right.
which is why the administrative piece of, like you said, I mean, if you're going to do active consent on this particular survey in response, with the nature of what it is and the smaller cohort, again, not to say that we can't ever move towards active consent in the future, I'm just wondering about the time constraints and how much it's going to take to carry it out versus...
In the class? How many minutes does it, I mean,
You
there's no
mean
doubt
how-
about it.
how-
But
you mean
even,
how hard
I
is it to
mean,
get the active consent?
how hard is it
Right, how
to
much
be able
track.
to get all of that back? I mean, like some of the things that were said in previous communications, like the parents get slammed with all different types of communication, all different types of email, and if you're reading it, if you're not reading it, how you're catching it or not, and part of that is how we maybe label them and again communicate the message that we're doing the survey. Because we want to make sure that parents are being informed so that they can make a educated decision about whether their child is going to take the survey or not. But then kind of chasing, again, for this small cohort, I'm just kind of weighing it out in my head. I'm just actively...
I would be uncomfortable moving forward at this particular moment with a survey without the active. And I'm not saying that I'm going to feel this way forever going forward. I think we're going to have to look as a group together at each request. This is just coming so close on the heels of the very same group of students. As a matter of fact, when it hit my desk, I put it back on the desk and said it's going to sit there for 24 hours while I think about that. Because I recognize that, you know, if it hadn't followed so close on the heels of the other one, things might feel very different. But I would want people to feel safe and okay with moving forward. and want them to know that we've read every question. The administrators are engaged in it. The Board of Education has had an opportunity to look at questions. And now we're giving them this active opportunity. As far as setting a precedent, you're right. We need to explain that really carefully in our communications, that for this particular survey at this time, we think this is the right way to go with this particular group of students. Just in case, even more concerning than the parents themselves would be the students. We wouldn't want them to approach a survey wondering what they're going to be seeing and whether or not they're ready to see it. We want them to be very comfortable about taking the survey. And I just think that's best practice right now, today, this month, next month, or anytime between now and May.
And then an answer for what's the purpose, what's the outcome? When students take it, would we get feedback in terms of anything?
No.
District. I'm just saying.
We're not getting
Jan,
district level
that-
feedback.
Correct,
Included
but that's important.
communication. Yeah.
Doesn't mean it's a bad thing, it just means that.
Right. So, does someone want to motion this or not motion it?
I'll make a motion.
So you're going to move to approve this survey to be delivered in the school system, and we should probably include, do you want us to include our views on opt-in or opt-out? And your recommendation is that we have to have active consent or an opt-in approach?
For this survey.
So Eileen's motion is to approve this with an active consent, opt-in approach for parental consent. Seconded by anyone? Kelly? Any discussion on the motion to approve this with a survey for the group as it's been presented with an active parental consent approach? No? Any other comments?
No, I'm not comfortable with it, that's all. It's just, it's not gonna tell us, it's a lot of our time, it's not gonna tell us anything. It's not gonna be specific to Old Saybrook. If you have, let's say you have, it's 120, you have half of that show up, and they do the same thing in Hartford where the classes might be larger, it's gonna be skewed that way, but, and there's, once you get the results back, again, are you gonna take corrective action based on the entire state's results?
No.
But all I'm saying is it's a lot of work to do for nothing.
Well, I mean, I agree with you that there are certain limitations, but it's not for nothing. Sometimes you have to be part of the whole, sometimes you have to be part of the bigger group, and we will learn things at the state level, which could potentially influence, so I hear everything you're saying, it's just I wouldn't go so far as to say that we get nothing out of it, because we do participate with all the other districts that have been chosen, and we help the state, help us formulate some things that might be helpful. Given the fact that we've asked some questions about tobacco use and other risky behavior, otherwise we can maybe have empirical information about how we compare to a statewide survey like this. It'll give us a little empirical information on whether or not an opt-in active parental consent policy, what that might look like. So I mean, there are things that I think could even benefit us directly, but sometimes I think you just have to be part of the greater good. So Kelly.
So just about the timing of this as well. So this is the same cohort asking very similar questions in terms of survey fatigue for this.
Yep.
How long can we wait to do this?
Again, with the payback for it.
So it's being, all it says is it would be administered between February and May. They have to wait for our sign off to even say
that they're gonna do it, right?
If we're gonna do it.
Our initial discussions were that it would happen, since it doesn't have to happen through all of the 6 through 8. If it was something that was chosen to do, it would be done through health classes. And we'd choose a couple of the health classes to do it through, so it was more of an appropriate environment for that to be happening. And there was a curriculum tie as well.
It's such an opportunity for us to show that we are growing too in our understanding and that we're listening.
So, there's a motion, seconded motion on the floor. Is there any further discussion on the motion to approve it as it's been presented, George?
I'm actually pretty lukewarm about this one as well. And so, I mean, I'm actually going to ask both Andy and Matt, right, because obviously there's going to be affecting your school. And what do you think about this? And again, in the heels of what just happened recently and Saybrook people and the way that we're over-assessing, I'm sorry, not assessing, but over-surveying, it just usually it's going to go.
So I'd say my first reaction was probably a little bit more strong than Jan's, in that I didn't want to put it aside to not talk about it or look at it for 24 hours. I kind of was decided at that moment. But I do believe that it informs our practice in terms of what we do and how we partner with families and how we listen to families and how we move forward. And that being said, you know, we had a lot of conversations with parents, and I think doing this and having, for lack of better words, a pilot of an active consent really shows our willingness to work with others, and in conjunction with having it being done with a teacher that has curricular ties. I mean, I do believe it to be something that is different. So I think both of our feeling on it changed as we talked about just, I think, the benefit in a larger sense than just the survey, just practice and how we, like Jan said, listen to families, partner with families, and how we move forward. In terms of survey fatigue, I think that there's a large window, so we can push it off. We just have to be cognizant of that as we do our Safe School Climate surveys as well, because that will come at the end of the year as well. So it would have to be timed appropriately. And, you know, if we're looking at 120 people, we're doing it directly through a specific health class. The management of that isn't as great as it may seem, because the teacher himself would be collecting the opt-ins. I think it would be not even just an opt-in. I would have to say yes or no, and then we would know who we've collected things from, and it's a little bit more manageable. So kind of was our conversations. But not to say we're, you know, obviously we're open to either way.
Vito.
Yeah, when did we get this in the district?
December 17th.
Yeah, I mean,
The letter went to June.
so you guys have had since December 17th, and we just looked at it today, so we're experiencing the same, you know, say optimistic that or pessimistic, you know, feelings that you have, and I don't think, I mean, you know, we've never, very frequently have we voted on or have taken action on something that was just handed to us and saying, okay, well, maybe
It
we
didn't
should.
help that the wiki was down and all that as well.
I know.
So, one of the things that, I mean, we do have a motion and a second
Yeah,
motion,
no,
but
you're
one of the legitimate ways in which you can handle this with Robert's rules is somebody can make a motion to table the item for a later meeting and give the board more time to
Well,
look
I
at it.
think
And that's one of the options.
you have to make a motion to withdraw the motion, right?
You can, I think you can just table, you know, so if you want, I mean, the way it would have to work is the motioner and the seconder would both have to withdraw the motion, which is one way to do it, then we can table the agenda.
I mean,
So I lean.
people may not want to withdraw anything, so.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying.
you gotta
So
give
so
it
I
to
go
you.
back to the, I believe, you know, I'm not as expert in Robert's rules as I used to be, but I believe a motion to table supersedes any motion that's on the floor. But we could make it simple because Eileen's the motioner and Kelly's the seconder. So if the motioner and the seconder withdraw, then there is no motion on the floor, then we can just agree to postpone. We were told in a recent session, I can't remember if it was Ann Littlefield or somebody else, that actually the motion to table is the least preferred method, that we just postpone the agenda item, which is something I can just, if there's no objection from the remainder of the board, we can postpone the item till the next meeting. So first things first, unless it's on the motion, we have to, I'm being asked to ask the motioners what they want to do.
Because I would withdraw the motion.
So George has got his hand up.
For purposes of,
It is on a motion. My question is going to be only that I need to understand the timing of this thing, because essentially by undoing this, if the timing is already off, we essentially made a decision.
So they want this to be done between February and May. Do we have to let them know now?
Well, they haven't called back, well, they'll probably call you because the letter was to you. When I spoke to them, they just said, you know, just let us know if you have any questions. They'd come to talk to the board, they.
So, you know, I'm getting a real lukewarm sense from many board members about this, so if you wish to withdraw your motion, and you wish to withdraw it as a second, then we can postpone it to another meeting. Jan, but
If I could just ask, so that I understand the nature of the lukewarm sentiment, because I'm hearing lots of different things. You know, so I'm trying to understand what everyone's perspective is.
Kelly.
So in terms of practice, I think that there'll be multiple options in the future for us to demonstrate our active consent and to trial that out. For me, it's a duplication of questions that we recently asked the same cohort where we're taking away from instructional time again to ask them the same questions and not get the same value from the data, because from the healthy family or the youth survey that we do, we get back specific information that's specific to our community that we can then operationalize. Whereas this is just gonna go into a broader pool where it's gonna be less decipherable. So for me right now, I'm not so sure that the value of doing the survey, the administrative time for the opt-in specifically for this survey outweighs the benefit, or, you know, counteracts the instructional time that would be lost.
Is there another hand? Do other board members would like to comment on whether we should move forward or not at this time?
I'm trying to move forward because I would reiterate that I think it's important. I take into consideration everything that Kelly was mentioning, but I also think that it's important that if the state's taking the initiative, it's nice to have Old Saybrook be part of that initiative, so we can certainly ask where the results are and how they're going to use them, but at least we're recognized in the state as taking part in it. And if there's any funding that comes through or whatever it might be, we're right there on the edge to get it because we participate.
All right, so it doesn't sound to me like you're withdrawing your motion.
No, I'm not. No, I'm just saying that I'm
I
in
understand.
support.
That's
But if the group decides I have to pull back, but I'm in support of moving forward with it.
Okay, so you've got Vito makes a very legitimate point with the wiki down and all people not necessarily have enough time to look at it. Other people want to move forward. I mean, we can either do an up or down vote on it, or we could just agree to postpone it. We don't have a sense of an urgency for something that's going to go from February to May and like that.
I think we should, I think we have to clean this slate here, because I think she withdrew her motion already.
Did you withdraw your motion?
Oh, she did. I was saying that I would withdraw it for the purpose.
You would withdraw it. Okay, she never said she would.
For postponing it, but
Right.
not to move forward on it.
Okay, so you'll be prepared to make a motion
Yeah.
at next meeting. So,
Yes, I will.
So, I don't know, I mean, the sense of the chair, such as it is that there's not a real consensus here, and I don't see a sense of urgency about this, so I don't think we should spend much more time on it. Eileen said for the purposes of just postponing it, she'd withdraw her motion. She's not speaking against the activity right now. So you seem to be willing to withdraw your second. So we now don't have a motion on the floor. And I like to follow the rules as best we can, even though we're not persnickety about it. So we don't have a motion, and what I'd like to do is, if there's no objection from the board, I'd like to postpone this agenda item to the next meeting. All right, very good. It gives us all a little bit more time to think about it. I don't think people are necessarily going to vote it down, but it just, there's too much confusion and people want to read the thing, so let's just take more time to look it over.
And it would be helpful again, Maria, for either Dan or Kathy to find out that span, that if we're gonna make this decision, it's not gonna put us in a position that we haven't given the state our decision.
They'll take the data whenever they can get it.
Yeah, I'm not worried about it. They're probably not gonna do anything with the data until the testing window closes. I would like it to be timely enough if we do decide to move forward. Since we'll have a significant amount of communication to do, we'd like some time to do that.
Okay. So the agenda item has been postponed to the February 3rd meeting, and we're now on the community conversation topic. You can see this there.
Yes. So, community conversation, this is our third one, and the last year we've done 2 this year. We have proposed a series of topics that were generated either from recent issues or from topics that came from the last community conversation, the first one we were just talking about, which is surveys. And remember, these are conversations. We don't go into the conversation saying, well, here are our answers and here's how we're going. We will sometimes do a presentation saying here's the direction we're moving in on something, but we want these to be conversations and we look for input. We believe that this topic will draw some interest from parents, and the question, what are procedures moving forward is probably what are best practices and what is it that we need to, that they are considering when their children are involved in surveys, what's important to them, get some input from them and talk to them about where we are. We won't be ready, we have to come back to the board to talk about our recommendation on surveys in the spring for you to decide on that one way or the other. So we won't be ready to say, here's the fait accompli, here's what we're doing. It's a conversation. We're going to talk about Microsoft 365 and the same thing. We will talk about the rollout and the direction that we're moving in. Hear from parents and others who have experience with Microsoft 365 who may be able to give us some input and share some ideas. We are leaving SBAC. This is only year 2 of the administration of the Smarter Balance Assessment Test. So we are leaving that on the agenda as a topic and talking about what we are hoping to get out of this year's test as far as informing instruction. We're putting the athletic and extracurricular planning on the conversation, and the athletic director, extracurricular coordinator will be there. We're talking about that initiative of moving all students, grade 6 through 12, into activities more completely, and what has been done so far, and take suggestions for the future, and talk about our ideas for the future. And student success planning, which we talked about tonight. Which really is going to be, again, conversation, two-way conversation amongst parents and educators, talking about what skills and focus areas do they see their children needing, or do they see in their capacity in their professional lives employees needing as they go out into the world. Anybody else from the team want to add anything I missed? So this is on the 12th, here, right here. We're going to use that same format that we have used. I think the parents have suggested they like 15 minutes. They would consider even more, but they didn't like 10. They felt that was too short. They move around. They can go to whichever topics they want to go to. They can skip those that are not of any interest. We're all engaged in it. And if there are any board members, as in the first one, if there are any board members who would like to join us and serve on a team and be part of the conversation, or if you just want to join us, we, of course, would love to have you there. And let us know if you have a particular interest in a topic and would like to be involved with it.
Okay, questions or comments from the board?
Something
Kelly?
So just, in a lot of these topics, they're focused more on the middle school, high school population. And I know that we talked a lot about a lot of the good when parents are kind of integrated a little bit more into what's happening and checking in on their things. But at any given time, should we consider having something that might be applicable to parents from each of the schools at one of these?
Well, Ms. Brown was part of the conversation, and she's actually working on SBAC because she feels that has significant impact. I can let you talk for yourself. And students in grades pre-K through 3 need to know about it.
No, I think that it's certainly, even last year when it was only a pilot, I know Heston fielded several questions from a forum that we had kind of after it was over, anybody who wanted to chat. And I think anytime there's an unknown, parents of young children, want to know more.
Right.
And I think that it would be really great for us to kind of at least give them a little bit of perspective, and even the administration of the test, not necessarily, what it's all about, but just, they're safe. We're individualizing, giving them that comfort level conversation. That's what my role is going to be with Heston. But you're right. I mean, you give them a topic that's really current to them, it's like you build the field, they'll come and play.
Yeah. So if you're, like, for example, with this, if you're a parent of a student that's a good one, you're going to probably only go to the SBAC piece of this meeting.
That'll be one of the calling cards for
portion,
them.
right?
Mm-hmm.
I think versus Health 365 would have a significant, I think it's something for them to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just something to think about. Cause
We
I think
did.
sometimes
We did, Kelly. Ms. Brown was in the conversation the whole time, so it was throw all the ideas out on the table, including feedback from last time plus new information that has come before us.
So, not that we want to propose more surveys, but in terms of the parents, but I mean the parents. So in other words, sometimes we, I do this all the time. We all fall into the trap of putting together community workshops and things on topics that we think are important. And I don't know, what do we do to survey parents about what they think would be important topics for us to do community conversations on? I mean, maybe we've done that before and I just didn't know about it, but maybe that's something to think about for the future as well, as some way to capture, and then you kind of Q sort it and see what the main themes are, and you might even be able to get more people to show up if it was actually sort of a field generated set of topics at
We had very successful attendance at our one this time last year. It was not as successful this fall. Each of those, though, they received exit surveys, and they talked about what was good about the structure, what they wanted to hear more about on those topics, and what other topics they wanted to hear more about. The rest of it came from, as I said, current topics, and then from district leadership talking about things that are being brought to their attention by parents.
So that's always very helpful, but it is limited to some extent to the people who are participating in those different events, as opposed to a broader survey. So I'm just saying, in the future, just to expand how it is that we do that, so that we, it's not the same topics being generated again.
The piece is that whoever's going to do that survey component might be worthwhile to add how students are made aware of the survey that they're going to be taking and why they're taking it. Because it's kind of directed toward parents knowing, but it's good to know too.
And our PTA has communicated to us, that they have their own website and have like 200 people on it, and they've given us, indicators of what it is they want to know more about, and we've had a forum at our site that, we've gotten upwards of 100 people, and even I think Jan and Heston came to our latest one, which was on the new reporting system, and we had, 35 people there? So if we just kind of direct it through the PTA and through teacher volunteers, so we kind of catch it at the moment.
Good.
So I don't know what else, I would rack my brain to think of what else they would
You've
want to
done
know
all that.
about. Because we've addressed the three things that they were the most concerned about, which was Common Core and the reporting system and our assessment. And that would probably be the other piece, is that, what are we assessing and why? And we did talk about that.
One of these topics is new. SBAC continues to be an issue. People continue to be concerned about it. It's confusing. It's so different.
And we have a parent council group that I'm going to begin to send agendas out prior to the meeting, and all parents have gotten the email of their grade level representatives, so I can certainly put that on the agenda as suggested topics for community conversation and get parent feedback.
We had 100 people show
Yeah,
up
I mean,
for our Common Core.
All surveys, I think, from this point forward, I like, what Sheila's talking about, because we're sort of taking ownership in the survey as a board. We know what it is, we're administering it, and the results are here in district. Where, something like a survey we just talked about earlier on, we have no interest in it. We have no ownership in it. But just this question is, what prohibits us from taking someone's survey like this one and once we worked out the bugs, giving it to, right across the board to everyone and looking at our results, stuff like that. Not that these are the ideal questions, but does anything prohibit us from doing that?
So most of the surveys are by parents.
Are they? Okay.
They're actually owned by someone.
But again, I like comparing the last discussion with this one. This one we're taking ownership in,
Oh, yeah, well, these are ours. which is
Right,
great.
that's what, it's good data that we can use right here, so.
It's
Any other
a
questions
national
on
survey as
what the
well.
superintendent has presented in terms of the topics for community conversations? All right, thanks, Jim.
You're welcome.
Do you want something else?
No.
We don't need to do anything.
No.
So we're at the end of the
should
new
meet
business.
beforehand.
We have administrators' reports. Do people feel that they've had an opportunity with the wiki down and everything for so long to review those? Do you have questions for the administrators? So we can start, do our usual. Start with the Goodwin School. Any questions on the Goodwin School? Any questions on the middle school? Your Holly?
I had a quick question. The athletic and activities for the high school and the middle school, do kids have an opportunity to come, and what would be the process for them to come to you guys with an idea?
We have student representatives from both the middle school and the high school that are on it, so it's a good question in terms of putting that out there for our students. Maybe we'll put it on the morning news and put that out there so that students can have the opportunity to share any sort of conversations with them. It's in its infancy stages right now, that the committee is meeting for the first time on Monday just to talk about kind of role and subcommittees and vision before we even get into ideas.
You're talking about student involvement on that particular
How
group, that
do
committee,
student
correct?
voices get heard to the committee?
You're saying
So we
for
have
the
student
committee,
representatives,
not
right?
with general new ideas for clubs and activities. You're asking
Well,
about
that as well, the
committees.
process to.
Okay.
get it.
And that will be a piece of what the committee does in subcommittee, is how do we establish new. So I think you're right. I think maybe that can be a topic of conversation in terms of how do we get it out there. And that can be one of the things that we put on the agenda for the meeting on that.
I mean, I know last year when we were looking for student voice in terms of planning for the field, we announced in a couple of different realms that we had students who were students who were on the Superintendent's and Principals Advisory Committee, and that people could go to them with ideas. I mean, I could see us doing something like that.